Welcome to Armchair Expert, Experts on Expert. I'm Dan Shepard, and I'm joined by a miniature mouse. This is the weirdest intro we've ever done. In 6.5 years, we've never sat side by side in an intro.
That's true.
Yeah, you're across from me.
I mean, we've done some side by side. You don't trust?
Well,
that's a ding, ding, ding.
You cannot help but side-eye me during
Yeah,
this.
you think I'm like angry?
Well, side-eyes are tricky.
Do you think side eyes mean mean girl? Do you think it means I'm going to bite you?
Plotting.
Plotting.
Yeah, I think plotting. Okay, this is among the most interesting interviews we've ever done.
Rare.
I didn't ever think in my life I would meet someone that was open about being diagnosed as a sociopath. And then add on to that, they also have a PhD in research psychology. And so our guest today, Patric Gagne, is a psychologist and a diagnosed sociopath. And she has a book out that is so interesting called Sociopath, a Memoir. She's written in the New York Times, and she's incredibly interesting.
What a privilege to get to talk to someone in that position.
Yes, just truly, truly fascinating. I think you will love it as well. So please enjoy Patric Gagne.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
How are you?
Very well.
I'm Dax. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Monica. Hi, nice to meet you. I have stuff for you guys.
Oh, stop.
Exciting. We love stuff.
Oh my gosh, gift bags. What the heck is this?
I'm from the South. I don't show up anywhere unprepared.
Oh, I love it.
Without something in my hand.
Oh my God, best of classic car. This is a very nice present.
What?
What does yours say? History of wine?
Fashion.
Oh my gosh.
So sweet.
That makes me think you've heard the show, or you have really good research people around you.
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I've listened to a couple. I'm not a podcast person.
Yeah.
But what I found when all of the requests started coming in was my friends were saying, "Oh, you should listen. And I thought, I'm actually not going to. I want to come in without a lot of knowledge. I don't want to have any preconceived ideas of what's going on.
Totally.
But I've heard enough that I know what you guys are into.
Where do you live currently?
I live in Florida.
You still do?
Well, I lived here forever. And we were fortunate in that my husband, he works in tech, so he was able to work remotely. And we were in this house in Westwood that I loved, but we were expanding our family. So we already knew we wanted to go. My dad lives in what is essentially a retirement community. So we bought a house 2 doors down from his, thinking, we'll just flip it. And we got him squared away. We put everything in boxes. I think we were scheduled to leave the following week, and then the lockdowns with the pandemic happened. So not only do we live in Florida, but we live in a retirement community.
Wow.
Wow. Now, okay, this is a fantasy of mine based, and I'll tell you entirely why. Well, 2 experiences. One was I went with my friend Trevor in 5th grade to go see his grandparents in Arizona from Detroit, and they had a golf cart, and we were allowed to drive the golf cart around. There was shuffleboard, and I remember thinking, this is it.
It is.
All right, I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to contradict myself immediately. What I'm first going to say is this is going to be one of the most unique opportunities of my life as an interviewer, in that I've never, ever interviewed someone who identifies as a sociopath and has been diagnosed as such.
I bet you have.
Well, that's how I'm going to contradict myself. Then, of course, learning about it from your book, and I am curious where this number comes from, but in the book, it says 5% of Americans are sociopathic. So at the same time, I'm acknowledging certainly within 800 people, if those are the numbers, I've interviewed 40 of them. And maybe it over-indexes even in the fields I've talked to people. I have no idea. I think order-wise, I'd love to, A, find out where that number comes from, but B, I want you to explain it to us so we don't enter into your personal story, hanging onto a lot of the stereotypes I think probably I walked in with and people will walk in with. So first and foremost, where do we think that number comes from?
It's the go-to number for research. I think the last place I saw it actually referenced was the Cleveland Clinic. And here's what you need to understand about that number. Psychopathy and sociopathy tend to be conflated. The psychology field has a habit of changing the name of a disorder once it becomes too stigmatizing.
Yeah.
Okay, which is understandable.
It's like whack-a-mole. whack-a-mole.
Right. But that really becomes tricky when you're dealing with research, and especially with sociopathy, because they have more recently, again, because of stigma, decided to reclassify sociopathy as secondary psychopathy.
Oh, God, that sounds way worse.
And didn't it have a
so
phase of
much worse.
antisocial?
Here's the thing with antisocial personality disorder. A lot of the claims are sociopathy was replaced by antisocial personality disorder. What they're not telling you is you cannot diagnose sociopathy using the criteria for antisocial personality disorder. The criteria for antisocial personality disorder is separate from the criteria for sociopathy, just like you cannot diagnose someone who's antisocial using criteria set forth with sociopathy. So although they are very similar, they're not the same. And I can speak to that from experience in that when you're looking at someone with antisocial personality disorder, it's going to be someone who has no impulse control and tends to make the same mistakes over and over again without the ability to evolve. They're going to have that juvenile record that's a mile long. They're going to have a difficult time keeping a job, staying in school. They're going to have an adult criminal record. In fact, one of the criteria for antisocial personality disorder, in order to give someone that diagnosis, there needs to be evidence of conduct disorder, which is something that you assign mostly to children. The kids that are acting out, but acting out in a way that's particularly problematic.
Criminal?
Yes. Or just excessive expulsions. They'll take that into account because they understand some people are going to take pity on a kid and not send them to juvie just to spare them that stigma. So they're looking for evidence like that. So vandalism, violence within the classroom, expulsions, suspensions, etc. I didn't have any of that.
Violence in the classroom.
But not reported. And you need evidence in order to have that diagnosis.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of what sparked my interest when I started asking, who says that all sociopaths act this way? They don't.
Reading about it made me see so many parallels about so many different things and really ask myself, what are we really focusing on when we label these things? Because as I read your story, weirdly, the outcome of your behavior and my behavior as an addict, some of it's identical. We're not even measuring you and I by the outcome of our behavior, but we're really trying to figure out why we behave that way, which is fascinating. And even some of the outcome of your behavior would also mirror some of the things in other neurodivergent things like autism, like maybe this lack of being able to see emotions on other people and this empathy. So it's this big stew of overlapping outcomes, but hopefully we're trying to track down the causality of all these things.
And that's why conversations like this are so important, because I'm so glad you said that, because I would like to say that, but the perception of sociopathy as it stands today, I would never want to say the struggle with sociopathy is similar to the struggle with addiction, because members of that community are going to push back, rightly so, because they don't understand the nuance of the disorder. And that's so key here is so many of the destructive behaviors I committed, the motivation for it was not malice. It was not intent to harm. It wasn't callous disregard for
sadism.
others. No, it was
discomfort alleviated by a behavior.
At the time, I couldn't explain why. Certainly when I was a child, all I knew was I felt this compulsion, do it. And then I would do it and it would go away and I didn't question it. I just knew this bad behavior makes the pressure go away. And the way to continue to give myself these prescriptions, I'm just going to have to slide under the radar because I don't want to be othered. I see what that does. There was another kid in my class. I remember he threw a desk through a window.
Yeah, it's a red flag.
Obviously, there's a lot happening.
Yeah, he probably had trauma, though. I just think everything's trauma.
100%.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, okay, so I won't be doing that because every adult descended on the classroom, rightfully so. And I just remember, yeah, I can't do that.
Right. We're going to have to come in a little softer than that approach. And I'll also say selfishly, there is a laziness in me that is bummed as we get more compassionate for everyone, as we should. That is the goal. We're kind of running out of like sociopath. We all agreed like, yeah, we can definitely just say like, oh, that person's a sociopath. You know, they're bad. They're evil. And then I hear your story. I'm like, no, it's another thing you're fucking born with that you have to wrestle with. And my God, now I can, at least in good conscience.
I know.
And I'm like, what the fuck is left? I guess we'll have Monster as this kind of fictitious, bad, evil Hitler person. And then everything else we're going to have to be a little more understanding of.
But we
Yes and
already,
no,
yeah.
because here's the thing. That reputation as evil is earned. There is a small percentage of the sociopathic personality who does commit these atrocious crimes. You know, like the Ted Bundy example, although I personally don't happen to think Ted Bundy was sociopathic, but it's that generalized.
scariest.
Yes. But make no mistake, sociopathy is a perilous mental disorder. The traits associated aren't great. So I don't want this to be we should
Invite them all into your home.
No, it's not that.
Put a sign in your front yard, sociopaths welcome.
100%.
Free food.
Just like any disorder, sociopathy appears to exist on a spectrum. It speaks to the individual's ability to get the help that they need. The destructive behavior that I began doing as early as I can remember, that was an unconscious coping mechanism that ultimately developed into a lifestyle that I was subsequently able to address because I'm a white woman of privilege. I had access to education. I had access to
Benefit of the
Doctors,
doubt.
yeah.
Yes.
A diagnosis.
Yes, everything. So many people don't have that.
Well, that's what I like about your book. Your book isn't a call for America to open up their arms and offer free drinks to sociopaths. It's actually to help sociopaths.
Yeah.
Like, I hope you're reading this book and you're identifying with it. And if you're identifying with it, I'm going to roll out some tools and how I have come to live a life that is free.
Yeah.
Okay, so really quick, is there anything structurally we can observe in an fMRI that would show us the sociopathic brain? Is there any mechanistic things associated with it?
I have been told that there is, and I've read some research studies on, but it hasn't been reviewed enough for me to say, yes, this is the thing that you should do, and this is where you should go, and this is how you can see the difference between someone who has psychopathy, sociopathy versus neurotypical. But they do exist. I've read the studies on how they are attempting to advance different testings that involve brain scans and an actual look into how the different parts of the brain are affected by sociopathy and psychopathy. Psychopathy is believed to be the result of brain abnormalities that make it impossible for someone to move through complex emotional development. While these people are born with the so-called inherent emotions, joy, sadness, surprise, disgust, they're not able to progress through the social emotions. Those are empathy, love, things that you teach children as they develop.
These are psychopaths.
Psychopaths.
Yes.
And there is not a general consensus on what those abnormalities are. Some believe it's an issue within the amygdala that processes emotional reaction to memory. And others believe the psychopath has the inability to process oxytocin.
The love chemical.
Correct. And trust building. But there isn't that consensus. And that is something that I'm really hoping they'll receive more attention and finances
Funding.
for research. Sociopaths, however, don't appear to suffer from those biological impediments. So while they can learn the social emotions, they just learn them differently. In the book, I describe it as an emotional learning disability because that's what it felt like. I remember seeing my sister internalize. My mother would come and say, well, we don't want to do that because that's bad and you don't want your teachers to get upset. And I remember my sister, oh no, that sounds awful to her.
The thought of them being upset
At her
Yeah.
or her letting someone down. And I just remember being like, I don't care. I don't want to go out and harm these teachers, but I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
But also the understanding very quickly that that response is not met favorably.
Right, you're smart enough to pick up social cues. This is a side note, and it's not psychopathy or sociopathy, but they did a retrospect on the original Rain Man, who the movie was based on.
Savant syndrome, right?
Yes, and this guy who lives in Utah, and they had an interview from him like 25 years earlier, and then they went and revisited him, and he kind of hangs in the Salt Lake City library. He's read every single book in there, and Leslie Stahl sits with him, and now this go around with him, he's like, hi, Leslie, and he seems to have developed all these kind of things that he didn't have 20 years prior. And she says to the dad, it seems like he's really kind of grown. And he said, don't confuse that. He's just very smart and he's learned that if he smiles, you smile better. He has picked up over time through practice a set of skills, but his brain hasn't changed. He is not processing your facial expressions the way, that was an example of someone just picking up the skill set.
And it's a great example because so many people like to talk about the sociopath mask, right? Like you can't trust the sociopath mask. They always have masks on. And to a large extent, that's very true. But my sociopathic mask isn't much different than the mask that most people...
Yeah, don't we all do that?
Yes.
Everything's a fucking spectrum.
And everyone has that front-facing personality that they put on just to exist in the world.
Make life easy.
The lubricant.
The difference is the sociopathic mask is always seen as something nefarious, when in reality, it's just a necessity. I understand that if I come in here and I have a flat affect and I start asking blunt, invasive questions, you're not going to love it. Or maybe you would.
I'm
but
gonna. We're gonna do that. 'Cause you had a nice turn in this New York Times interview. And I was like, now we're fucking getting somewhere. You said that, and she said, I would like to see the interviewer. I don't know if it was a man or a man. I kind of want to see that.
He said that?
Yeah, like let it rip. Take
Yeah,
off the
yeah.
mask, basically.
Well, he asked me if I thought that being an interviewer was,
Manipulative.
I said, I don't know, is it? He wanted me to ask him questions about it. And it was a very fun turn of events.
It was. You said, because otherwise I'm quiet. I ask invasive questions.
There we
I
go.
stare. My effect is low.
Mm-hmm.
And then he invited you, and you basically just said, why do you interview people? Or do you feel like you are manipulative for your job? And then there was some defensiveness. You called that out, no problem, because you don't give a fuck.
He didn't like that.
It was really fun, and it went somewhere really fun. So, anyways, I was like, oh, I'm so up for that at some point. But I guess let's start at the beginning. You, at least in the book, say at 7 years old, you have basically two emotions. You have anger and happiness.
The inherent emotions, which I learned later, there are more. And I'm remiss because I should be able to just list them out by now, but I can't. I always forget. But it's happiness, sadness, disgust, surprise, and there's 3 or 4 more that are inherent emotions from the jump. Everyone has these emotions, including psychopaths.
The ones you can remember feeling the most would be anger and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of the time, you're feeling just very, very flat.
Correct.
Are you disassociated at all?
I don't feel disassociated because I'm very present. I just feel, back then I would have described it as nothingness. Now I would describe it as tranquil.
Content.
Kind of.
What you're aspiring to do
Yes.
with meditation.
The stress for me came from other people's expectations of me to emote the way they were emoting. And the stress wasn't, oh, I need to make these people happy. It was, if I don't do what they are expecting of me, I'm going to be outed. And then life as I know it will cease to exist. I won't be able to get and do and have the things that I want because someone's always going to be keeping an eye on me.
Yeah, your otherness would exclude you from any
Correct.
kind of life.
I assume it's a spectrum of intensity, right? I guess some people would have a very flat reaction to a murder potentially in front of them. Is it a spectrum like that?
I think the spectrum is more in how difficult it is to learn the social emotion. So socialization is what every parent does for their kid. Typical socialization techniques didn't work for me. It just didn't make any sense. It didn't land. Well, you want to do this because so-and-so will get her feelings hurt if you don't go to a party. It's like, okay, but I don't want to go to this. And why would she get her
But that
feelings
just feels
hurt?
like
That doesn't make
boundaries
sense.
to me. Inherent boundaries or something.
There are so many overlapping themes to your point that, yeah, it does sound like boundaries. But to me, it was, I couldn't understand propriety, like we should do this. And the shame. I didn't have any shame about anything.
Or guilt.
Right. So I think the spectrum taps into how difficult it is for someone to eventually learn those social emotions. And it is possible for someone with sociopathy. They just learn them differently.
And you need a system.
Yes.
Ultimately. And that's going to be one of my last questions, is the coin that is sociopathy, as is addiction. Like, I'm delighted to have it. Every part I like about myself is also related to that. We'll wrap up with that one. But in practice, the thing that interests me at the beginning of your story is this, you call it pressure. I guess as an addict, I would call it discomfort.
Sure.
And you started discovering young, you would steal things that would relieve this discomfort or this pressure. You stabbed a classmate in the head with a pencil.
Oh.
I think that's a good, salacious, interesting one.
Yeah, I'm curious about
Yeah,
that one.
I want to hear about that.
The pressure had been building, and discomfort is a good word for it. I think pressure is what I sort of latched onto as a kid.
A need to regulate. We could agree on that, right?
Yes, but neurotypical regulation techniques did not apply. I couldn't make myself feel better the way that other people made themselves feel better. I just remember being a kid, sitting behind a little girl in school, and I looked up and she had barrettes in her hair, and I felt this, take that barrette and you're going to feel better. It didn't make any sense, and yet I knew it was accurate.
I should have started there. It didn't start with the stabbing, but yes, that's the first time you feel the relief.
And little transgressions like that usually did the trick. But on this day, when I assaulted this child, I had been doing a lot of little transgressions and they weren't working. And I could feel it. As a kid, you're like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? But as a kid, I had a harder time talking myself through it. And there was a little girl standing next to me and she had just been getting on my nerves, as they do.
Yeah.
And I bent down and she kicked my backpack. And when she did, she knocked out my pencil box that was full of pencils. And then I just remember picking up a pencil and stabbing her in the head with it.
Wow.
And I remember what was problematic, other than the obvious, was it wasn't just the pressure that disappeared. It was replaced by this euphoria.
Elation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I knew enough to know that ain't great.
This is untenable. We're going to run out of heads to stab, and
Yeah,
I'll be
we
kicked
are.
out of here quickly.
So you did know that, though. So that's interesting. You knew this isn't good, that I like it.
I always knew right from wrong. Cognitive, it wasn't internal. That's the difference.
That's part of one of the erroneous stereotypes is, sociopaths don't know the difference between right and wrong.
Oh, yes, they do.
Also, you hear sociopaths track highly empathetic, actually, if you go by the Paul Bloom definition, that actually they're quite good at knowing what you are thinking and needing to hear from them.
Because they've spent a lifetime
Weird
mirroring.
paradox.
Yes.
Yeah. So, of course, as a parent, and you're a parent, I cannot help but think about what mom's going through. So you're in a good situation at the beginning of this. Dad is a successful music executive. You guys live in a nice place in San Francisco, and there's tools at your disposal, I presume. Mom has the bandwidth to observe you, and she's slowly detecting some things. She finds the box of stolen shit. How do I ask this? You have love for your mother. Clearly, it's in the book. Are you aware of her concern and panic about your behavior? And what does that do to you? Are you detecting, like, this woman I love, my main resource in life, I'm dependent on them, they're scared for me, should I be? But you don't have fear, really.
No.
Okay.
So the way I internalized that is I really relied on my mother to be my moral compass because I understood I didn't have one. I didn't always understand social cues. So I really relied on her to sort of help me navigate the more nuanced parts of social emotions that I didn't understand, like behavior aside. And I remember thinking, if my mom turns on me, and by turns on me, I mean...
Excludes you or rejects
No, because
you?
she would never have done that. But if she starts to give me the look, if she starts to perceive me as, then I'm not going to be able to rely on her as my moral compass anymore. It was selfishly motivated. It was, I need to do what I need to do to pacify her, because if I don't, I'm not going to be able to rely on her as a compass. I would watch her reactions to things and be like, okay, so that's what you do when you're presented with this information. Check, I got that. That's how you want to respond if somebody says this. I really turned to her and my sister for these different masks to wear so that I would be presenting appropriately. And we were living in a time when mental health wasn't a thing. We hardly had words or tools for anxiety and depression or addiction, much less sociopathy. So my mom did the best she could, but she didn't know what she was dealing with.
I would imagine she's watching you. Two things. You go to a birthday party when you're a little kid and all the girls fall asleep. Not a birthday party, a sleepover, sorry.
I think it was a birthday party sleepover.
Okay, hybrid. And all the girls go to sleep and then you're like, okay, well, I'm bored and I'd like to explore the house. And now you're exploring their house. And then you decide, fuck, I do want to be at home. My mom said I could come home if I want. So you just leave in first grade and you walk through San Francisco and then you go into someone's garage and you go in their car. And by the time you arrive to mom, this has got to be a moment for her where she goes, okay, there was some stealing. There's this. I see she's not really bonding with the other kids. She's probably very just afraid you're going to be lonely. But now I think this is a moment where it shifts gears, where she has to actually be pretty concerned about your safety because you don't seem to have the fears that a normal kid would have that would keep them from roaming San Francisco in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Is that when she gets the scaredest?
Unfortunately for her, she wasn't taking my behavior as a sign that something was wrong with me. She was internalizing it, that there was something wrong with her.
Of course.
Yeah.
That she had somehow done something wrong, that she was to blame. So she felt all that shame and guilt. What am I doing that is causing this child to do that? And she was so emotional about it that, again, I remember being very, okay, I knew that wasn't the right thing to do, but I wasn't expecting it to result in this level of emotional reaction.
You couldn't have predicted that.
I think a normal kid would have, and I'm using that term loosely.
Yeah, of
but
course.
no, it didn't even register that this would be a problem.
Now, here's the fantasy liberating part of your condition, which I found intriguing, is you go out. It's the first time you've been out in the middle of the night in San Francisco, and you're like, this is awesome. Why aren't people out all the time? It's like a totally different vibe. Garage doors are open. I can explore. Some aspect of that I'm envious of. It's
Oh
like
my
very
God, that's
liberating.
so the opposite.
Yeah, it's
I
like
can't-
literally
I
when I'm reading,
cannot
I am kind of making you relative to Monica, and I'm like, well, this is like if there is a spectrum, these two are like on the complete opposite
I'd
ends
be
of this.
so scared.
I just remember that walk and subsequent walks like it, feeling like it was a spa visit. All the pressure evaporated. I think that was because when I was alone, I could just drop the mask. It was late at night. No one was going to ask me what I was doing. And if they did, I would have spun a story and taken off. I could just be myself. And I think that's what I was resonating with in that walk. I loved the idea of all these people in their houses and all of the garage doors open. So it was these glimpses into lives that I could just walk up and look at like I was in a gallery.
Like you hit pause on mankind.
Exactly right.
Yeah, I've kind of wanted to do that. That's a fantasy. Like be at
Yeah.
a mall, hit
Yes.
pause, and then go like snoop around people's purses and trying to figure out like
Yes.
detective, what is going on? I want to avoid inadvertently projecting or linking what you're saying into something that's really not transferable. But I guess my curiosity is you're intelligent, you're aware murders happen, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You're aware that the world's dangerous or not.
Now or then?
Then I'm trying to figure out if it's the world's dangerous, but you just don't give a fuck. Or that your immediate thing is so compelling that just gets silenced
There's something to be said with cognitive knowledge and emotional knowledge.
big time. Yeah.
And I think that's what was going on. Cognitively, did I understand that this was maybe not the safest choice, smartest choice? Sure. But if it doesn't hit you emotionally, I mean, we've all
If the
been there.
amygdala doesn't
especially
fire from that
fear.
information.
Correct. We all know the things we shouldn't be doing. How about when you know the guy or girl is wrong for you, but it's the emotion that causes you to move forward in this relationship, even though your brain is, it's the same
Totally.
thing. When there's no emotional connection,
Or when you sit down and eat 2 cheese pizzas, like the brain knows you're going to regret this, but you're like, yeah, also emotionally, I'm going to eat this.
I mean,
fucking thing.
Yeah.
fear is fully emotional. You're right. You can know, like, I should be scared, but that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, that's nothing. It's just what's in your body that's causing you to stop or run.
and those constructs are important. They help keep the collective you safe. Something does shift when you are moving through the world without fear. You tend to attract less danger. And of course, this is
Yeah, you have a
junk
confidence.
science.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, my father used to say to me, kid, you can get anywhere in life with a confident stride and a walkie-talkie. And I never forgot that.
Yeah.
Because if you're not consumed with those things, if you're not moving through the world or really held up on fear, yeah, chances are I can just walk up and get what I need and walk out and we're fine.
Yeah, you don't smell like a victim. There's
Yeah.
no fear to detect on you. I don't know why I'm just thinking of this, but did you see Men in Black, one of my favorite movies?
Mm-hmm.
Will Smith passes that test. Remember, all the guys are shooting at the monsters?
Yes.
And he's like, no, that dude's just doing push-ups. I wouldn't want him coming in the gym and killing me. But this little girl, she's 7. She's reading quantum physics.
100%.
That makes me think of that scene.
Yeah.
Funny.
Okay, so at 11, I think would be the next fast forward. Tell me about Florida and the tour of the prison. And you actually get an idea of what you maybe have. Is that the first time?
I think it was the first time it really was presented to me. I can't believe that I hadn't come across that word at some point, but I don't think that it was presented to me definitively. And this is something too, I think with my personality type, I've told this story to people dozens of times over the years. And every time I do, it's, wait, what? You went to a prison in the middle of the night? And it took a while for me to remember to say, I need to preface this with I know this isn't normal, but my uncle worked there. He was a graveyard shift correctional officer. And I had always had a fixation with Alcatraz. And I think just criminal behavior, which is almost certainly an unconscious trying to figure things out for myself. So he invited us to this prison. He could only do it after hours. And I just remember walking through and seeing all of these men and hearing another guard say, all these people are sociopaths. What's that? It's someone who doesn't learn from their mistakes, doesn't feel badly about what they did, does the same stuff over and over again.
And said, if I left my wallet on the table right here and walked out,
He was like, would you go through it? And inside I'm like, fuck yeah, I'd go through it. I'm like, no, right, you wouldn't because you're not a sociopath.
and if you did,
Yes.
would you feel bad? Yeah, I'd feel terrible.
I'd feel so bad. Who would do something like that? But I'm like, no, I wouldn't feel
And
bad
he's
at
like,
all.
they want it. Got real concrete.
Yes.
Okay, now your story is you got invited, but as I hear it, it's hard for me not to imagine that your mother didn't orchestrate this. I'm not kidding. That she had some fear that you might end up in jail and that you needed to be scared straight because you think you're a good lie detector.
She would pass a lie detector. If you asked her that question, she would say, Absolutely not. It never factored into my decision making for 1 second. So if she did set that up, it was latent.
It was good. But you can see from the outside, like knowing what she's going through,
100%.
you end up on this very bizarre field trip that no one gets to take. And the explanation, sure, is plausible. But to me, it feels more like if I were the parent of a child I was really worried was going to end up incarcerated, I might want to let them see what that looks like.
Do you know that has never occurred to me? But I'll leave here and ask her. I remember her being as excited about it as I was. And I just remember seeing all these men and the guards saying that they couldn't look at us. They had to keep their heads down. And we were 2 little girls and a woman just walking through this male prison. And I just found that power displacement so like
You know the word you
otherworldly.
want to say. Say the word you want to say.
I don't know the word. I promise. What did you think it was?
Something positive.
Exhilarating is what
Exhilarating,
yeah.
maybe, yeah.
I couldn't think of that word, but that's what it was.
Right, because you still got to hide. Even though you're out in the open, I'm sure you have a lot of muscle memory of hiding.
It's less hiding and more, I still have to mask.
You have an awareness right now that you want to be truthful and not scare everyone out of your experience. You're still walking some tightrope.
Right.
I don't know that you'll ever shake that in life. You know enough to put it through the filter, which is like, wow, what I really want to say is like that prison made me horny. Let's
Yeah.
say that's the word. You're like, that's going to be a little too much. Let's go to an 8 on that, but still have my intention to be
Again,
known.
though, that's everyone. Don't you think everyone's adjusting slightly to whatever's in front of
Yes.
them? Maybe I'm a sociopath. I don't
Well,
know.
when you're reading it, I am doing that. I'm like, am I a sociopath? Because a lot of the stuff I can relate to, I have some criminality in my background, but I feel deeply, deeply sad when I hurt someone's
Yeah.
feelings. I did keep coming back to that. I'm like, no, and I can think of times this week. I do have that. And your book answered it for me. But one of my curiosities, a lot of my behavior that seemed to be sociopathic, or certainly I didn't care about the consequences. My motivation was the world has been unjust to me. I am the recipient of violence and alcoholism and all this stuff. And I didn't get a fair shake, and people aren't playing by the rules with me. And so I'm not obligated to play by the rules either. And in fact, I'm going to write the justice scales. When I try to conceptualize your experience, I did wonder, is any of that at play? But I don't think it is. I think it's a completely different thing, again, with the same outcome. But I had a pretty bulletproof, wasn't a fair shake for me, so I'll take whatever the fuck I can get.
I don't remember feeling that way at all as a kid. It's tricky for me to equate it to other mental disorders because sociopathy, as it stands now, people don't want to be associated with this bad word.
It definitely needs a rebrand.
Yeah, it really does.
And maybe not secondary psychopathy. That is
Jesus.
not a good.
No, when I heard that, I was like, guys, I'm not sure we
Improved
Didn't
it.
nail
Yeah.
it. Did
not
not
sure we
nail
stuck
it.
the landing on this one. But I felt this compulsion. I remember one time seeing, I can't remember what it was, but it was like, okay, well, you got to take that because it's right there. And it's like, I don't really feel like taking it. I'm just tired.
Meaning stealing something or taking shit?
Stealing something.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
like, you got to just take it because you can get ahead of it. It's kind of like taking the Xanax before the anxiety kicks in. Just do it. And then you won't even have to worry about it today. Or if you do, you won't have to worry about it until later. So some of it wasn't rooted in anger or grievance. It was more, I don't want to do this, but the opportunity has presented itself and I need to take every opportunity I can. But I do remember feeling that later in life, particularly when I was dating my then boyfriend, now husband,
Dave.
and he was very much trying to keep me to play within the lines, but I noticed he didn't play in the lines. And that's fine. We can have an open conversation about it. But I remember feeling, if you're not going to play within the lines, you fucking think I'm going to play in the lines?
Yeah.
And I remember stealing a car and just feeling exactly what you just described, which is, fuck you.
Yeah. Look at me.
I'm going to do this and I'm not going to feel the least bit bad about it. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to fall asleep next to you. And it's going to be like,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That almost seems like growth, though. You
It
wanted to
does.
get even
It
with
does.
him. You cared
It's more
enough about.
emotional.
Yes, it was the unjustness of it. Here I am working really hard to understand myself and really hone in on my motivations, and I'm keeping track and I'm trying to stay ahead of my prescriptions. And this motherfucker's out here doing anything he wants to, left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, but his stuff doesn't count because he's not a sociopath. And it's like, it does count.
And also, it doesn't. Just like my wife can drink wine. There are things that aren't fair for me that are fair for her because I am this very specific person. So I do have to have a different playbook.
Correct. But drinking wine isn't illegal or against the law or morally inappropriate. There were some things that he was doing. That's a lie, what you just told. How come you can tell a lie, but I can't tell a lie?
But could I argue maybe because if he tells one lie, it's not going to lead to this other, the outcome will be different from his life. If I fuck some stranger and my wife fucks a stranger, those are different outcomes. I'll then fuck 1,000 strangers in the next 3 years. She won't. So we do have a different playbook.
That's true.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
You're a good student, clearly. We share this in common. We both are Bruins.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I think we probably were there at the same time-ish. I graduated in 2000.
Yes.
You did too?
Whoa.
Yes.
We were roaming the campus at the
That's
same
crazy.
time. How do we get to UCLA with all these things happening?
Wait, how does it get is that later?
So we're at a prison and you get a sense, okay, I have that. I know I'm different, and there it is. That's the name of it. And then does that send you off to explore or not yet?
Not yet. I was still trying to figure out what I could do to keep myself in check. When I was younger, I started experimenting with smaller acts of controlled deviance.
Like as a preventative measure as opposed to it's too late measure?
I didn't have the awareness that that's what I was doing because for so long I felt very tethered to my mother as my moral compass. I'm going to do the things that she tells me to do and no more. That's what's going to keep me in line. But as I started to become harder to handle, and she has such an emotional range, I realized this isn't going to work. She's really starting to suffer based on what she perceives as her failures. Those arguments are getting more and more volatile. So I made a decision. I can't tell my mom the truth anymore about anything. I'm going to have to go this alone.
It's just too painful.
And also, she wasn't helpful to me.
Yeah, by the way, I just thought about it in a way that I would think about it, not how you would think about it.
Yes. No, it was selfish. This is not working for me. So I decided to go it alone. And one of the things that I remembered thinking was, I don't have this tether anymore. I can't rely on it. So I'm going to have to sort of create my own tether. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is by lying. Whereas before I tried to be honest about everything because I thought I had to in order to stay tethered to my mother. Then I started lying about everything. And I remember feeling so safe. And I remember thinking, everyone says the truth shall set you free, but that was never the case for me. It always had the opposite effect. For me, lying was like a superpower I'd never been able to use. It was so easy. It was so effortless. I didn't steal from you and secretly pocketing cash, but I could lie about the destructive behaviors that I was engaging in to keep the pressure at bay. And then I could take care of myself. I would cut school. I would break into houses that were for sale and just spend time in them. And the argument I kept having was, none of these things are hurting other people.
You weren't vandalizing things.
No, I wasn't. And I was very mindful about that. I'm not in here destroying or causing pain to anyone or anything. So who's to say it's bad? Oh, well, it's bad because you shouldn't be skipping school. Why? And being able to lie about that was like getting to wear a big blanket. I don't have to justify anything.
What's weird is it's almost the exact same relief people feel when they finally stop lying, which is like, oh, I don't have to hide anymore.
Yes. But again, the motivation, the sociopath is always perceived as this nefarious liar. Like, I'm going to tell you this so that you'll trust me, so that you won't notice. I was manipulating, but not to harm someone or to get something from someone. I was manipulating so that I could continue to engage in these acts of deviance without getting caught, so that I could take care of myself. So I would follow strangers around and I would watch them through their windows, and then I would just go home and get in bed. I didn't take anything or vandalize property.
How did sex and substances, what is a stereotypical association with those two things? Because the temperance of both are driven a lot by fear, which you don't have, and then the societal pressure to not be a slut or whatever the thing is. Did you find that you were more experimental because you didn't have any of those regulators on you?
Yes and no. I remember having an early sexual experience that by any neurotypical definition would have been perceived as perfect. This is a person who cared about me. This was a person who cared about the experience for me. And I remember the physical element being great, but there was no emotional connection. And I remember feeling more displaced in that moment than I ever had. It was, oh, if this is what is expected of me, I'm clearly broken in some way. I don't have this emotional connection that everybody talks about. And It was very clearly expected of me. I was back to the drawing board where I had to make a choice. Do I lie and say I felt all of it, or do I never see this person again? And I chose the latter.
Well, if ever there was a kind of societal construct, it revolves that whole thing. Very much on one level, we're just an animal here to reproduce like all others. But what's built on top of that is so dense.
Gosh, and so problematic and complicated, especially for women.
So this guy that you had sex with in the quote perfect scenario, you said he cared about you. Did you care about him?
I did, but
And what does that even really mean, I guess?
Well, you say in the book, no butterflies, no feelings of romanticness, none of those things you see in a movie.
it was very cognitive. This is a good person, a kind person. He seems to love me a lot. I did not have those feelings of love, but I remember telling him I loved him back because at the time I thought this is all I have. So maybe I love you, but my love doesn't match your love. But does that mean it doesn't count? I didn't really have the tools to navigate that. Was it just this callous disregard? I don't care about this person at all? No. But I did not have those feelings of love. And when I had my oldest and I didn't have those overwhelming feelings of love, I think unconsciously, a lot of us are sort of waiting to have that moment that everyone else has, whether it's a wedding or a baby being born or a graduation, these big life moments where everyone else is excited. Even though I know it's not going to happen, some part of me has always held out hope that
That'll
maybe
be the time.
this will be the
Yeah.
time. So when that wasn't the time sexually, I remember thinking, well, I'm just fucked, literally and physically.
Yeah.
And I just figured, how am I going to have a relationship with anybody? I didn't know if I was capable. Certainly does not come naturally to me.
You have to get annoyed much easier with a romantic partner because if you spend a lot of time with humans, they're annoying. And if you don't have that deep storybook romantic fantasy in your head about justifying it, I don't know how else you overlook just the general annoyingness of other people.
As a sociopath, I am just as interested in non-sociopaths as non-sociopaths seem to be with me. And that was something that I really discovered when I started to get my doctorate. That was selfishly motivated. I wanted to find out more about my personality type and others like me. I didn't give a shit about anything else. And yet, once I started learning about all of the other personality types, I became very interested. And I think that this is something I always felt. And it's why I used to love to go out at night and just look through people's windows and watch their lives playing out. To me, it was like a movie. I'm so interested in all the color that you, the collective you, experience in your emotional worlds. I don't know that I want it for myself, but I'm fascinated by
Sure.
it. And so do I find other people annoying? Certainly people are annoying, but I am more interested, I find, than I am annoyed.
Right. So the incentive structure is still there. It's just your fascination with them that keeps you tolerant because you're interested enough to stick around and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You must be an incredible student that you get into UCLA out of high school.
No, I was
You're
a
not.
terrible student.
Did you go to community college?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to SMC?
I went to a school in Florida and then I transferred over.
I was a transfer as well.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So you go to UCLA and it's there that we start understanding, exploring. You now have a therapist.
Okay, so I just want to touch on one quick thing.
Yeah.
I was a terrible student because it didn't ever occur to me that I needed to have good grades for anything. And I remember being a junior in high school or maybe even a senior and having somebody say, you need good grades to get into school. And it was the first time it occurred to me. And it's not even like I made this assumption because I'm sure if I had thought about it, I wouldn't have. But it was, yeah, you go to kindergarten, then you get into elementary school, you go to elementary school, you go to middle school, high school, college. That's how it goes. And it's like,
It's just the next
no,
school
dumbass,
you drive to.
you actually have to get good grades. And I just remember feeling, oh man. But I think that speaks to this personality type where there's no real game plan as to how I'm going to do these things. I figured out I need good grades. I need to find a way to get them quickly.
So you get into UCLA, and is that where you get a therapist?
Towards the end of being at UCLA is when my dad was pretty insistent that I start seeing somebody.
And how soon before I I feel like that would be a hard thing for a therapist to bring up.
I brought it up. I'd already been looking things up, and it's so interesting now that I'm mentioning this. Quick segue. With the eclipse today, I was in a hotel. I've never stayed in this hotel before. And I went outside by the pool area to see the eclipse, and I was the only person out by the pool. And as I looked up, I realized that building looks familiar. And this particular hotel backs up to my college apartment where I first started doing the research for sociopathy.
Really?
I could literally put my hand on the wall, and it was such an interesting moment. I can't believe I'm standing here on the other side of the wall. That was my bedroom right there. I just happened to be put in this hotel, and I just happened to go outside during this eclipse. What an interesting space to be able to experience.
So as you learn about your condition, both through you major in it, you get a PhD in it. The only thing I compare it to is I have a friend who very late in life discovered they were on the spectrum, and they just kind of rewound through their life and are like, oh, right. I say I like shorts because they're comfortable, but I really can only wear shorts. Okay, that's part of that. Taking an inventory of their life through a new lens and things are starting to make sense more. Did you have that experience as you started studying?
100%. So when I heard about the term in my class, I remember feeling relief. If this is what I am, that means there's a name for what I am. There's going to be research on it. There are at least enough people to justify a whole personality type. So surely there's a treatment plan too. So I'm just going to go find it. And then it became evident that there was no treatment plan and there was very little research. So when I went to see my therapist, I was very upfront about it. This is what I think is happening. Here are the reasons that I think they're happening. And let's start from there. Because I didn't want to go in hiding anything or being cagey, because what a waste of time that would have been. So it was pretty quick.
Now, despite the fact you say in the book, and boy, do I relate to this, like I should have been arrested so many times, it's crazy. You never got caught. You stole cars. You broke into people's houses. You really didn't have any of those conventional consequences. But I'm curious, even though you weren't taking on the emotional weight of having disappointed people or hurt people, was there an amount of wreckage accumulating in your life that was an incentive to try to find a treatment for this? Like the notion that you were in search of some treatment plan for this, to me implies there was some wreckage accumulating or something that would incentivize you having treatment.
Not wreckage. It was more logic for me. I remember feeling this isn't tenable. I will get caught eventually. And contrary to popular belief, I recognize that being in a functioning society is a great thing. And it was something that I wanted to be a part of. I recognized that I wanted a relationship. I wanted a house with a picket fence. I wanted to make dinners on Sundays and listen to jazz. And I had these images in my head. And one of them came from a house that I saw when I was young. I remember seeing this man and his, I assume, wife, and they had a baby. They were opening a bottle of wine. And I just remember thinking, that's what I want. What I wanted was normal. But I don't think I understood that at the time. I remember having this conversation with myself, which was, you're going to need to decide how you want to deal with this. No answer is wrong. Just what do you want to do? And the thought that came to mind was, I don't want to do this anymore. It's exhausting and it's isolating. I want to take steps to find healthier coping mechanisms so that I'm not having to rely on these largely criminal, antisocial, this is not sustainable.
Got you. And what were the tools you cobbled together? And I know Dave plays a role in this. How did you put together a system for yourself?
The prescriptions helped a lot at first.
So there's medication.
No, my behavioral prescriptions.
Okay.
I wish there was medication.
Yeah.
These prescriptive behaviors worked a lot at first, but like a regular prescription, I started weaning myself off of them.
Can you give some examples of what those were?
So I'm very aware that these are not normal behaviors, but I restricted myself to stalking and breaking into homes. I said no more car theft because that's, yeah. Okay, yes. yes.
Okay.
So wait,
Got it.
so stalking was allowed and breaking in, B&E.
For me.
This is kind of like SLA, where you set your own definition of sobriety.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I've decided that these things are perfectly fine. Again, cognitively, I knew they weren't.
They were an improvement.
Well, when I went to the library and I looked up stalking, I saw that stalking was largely based, again, on motivation. You're stalking someone with the intent of scaring them or harming them. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. So this is fine. I would follow people. I would watch them. I would follow them home. I would watch them.
Would you get busted? Would people like, what the fuck?
Never.
Didn't I just see you at 7-Eleven?
When I was like 12, I got busted by somebody walking down the sidewalk. And it was hey, what are you doing? And I remember turning around and really leaning into my lack of fear. When I stepped forward, it registered on the guy's face, oh, this is a child, because I stepped into what had to have been the moon. And I remember going, shh, we're playing hide and seek, and running, knowing full well how fucked up that was
So
going to
scary.
He would have had a gun, he would have shot you. Yeah.
I remember that moment, those little streaks of like, I like the fact that I'm not scared. And if I had been caught later in life, I would have had some innocuous reason. I would have made sure it didn't feel scary to
You
that
just
person.
lied.
And then I started sort of weaning myself off. If I was doing it 3 times a week, I would start doing it 2 times a week and then 1 time a week. But then I noticed that in weaning myself off, the pressure would start to build. So I would sort of try to supplement that with cognitive behavioral interventions. Really, really worked for me. And I feel that it would be beneficial to anyone who is on the mild to moderate side of the sociopathic spectrum, because it's the behavior you want to address first. Because when you look at sociopathic diagnostics, it's all rooted in behavior. But the behavior is just a reaction to what's going on up here. And I've always found that to be troublesome, because if you're only judging someone based on their behavior, you're never going to get to the root cause of it. I tried to eliminate the behavior using journaling. So when I would be on my lowest, quote unquote, dose of prescription, I would start to write, I want to go out and break into someone's house because if I don't, I'm afraid I'll hurt someone. And then it was a reframe based on logic. Well, you've never hurt someone other than when you were very young. You have managed to curb these impulses both with and without prescriptions. The odds of that happening are low. So just these thoughts, counter thoughts. And then also analysis, talk therapy. Once the behavior had stopped, I was able to sit with that discomfort and then explore that discomfort. And that was really, really helpful to not just stop the behavior, but reframe the whole picture and come up with different coping mechanisms for what was essentially anxiety related to the fact that I didn't feel the way I was, quote unquote, supposed to.
That's one of my big questions. What is the relationship between sociopathy and anxiety? Because on the outside, I would think you'd be completely free of anxiety.
Anxiety related to things like what people think, or am I going to get this wrong, or am I going to be in trouble? What I was able to figure out was that my anxiety, and this tracks with a lot of the research, one of the first researchers to really dig into this hypothesized that sociopathic behavior was related to emotional conflict and inner frustration. And I really landed on that because it was this feeling that I was supposed to be feeling a certain way. And that if I didn't, I was going to be removed from my social comforts. And this feeling that I had to act a certain way, I had to keep the mask on.
This is like a closeted gay person.
Yeah.
I have thought about that multiple times. One of my closest friends is gay, and he said the same thing. And I said, you can say it, but I promise you, if I go out there and I start equating.
Yeah. I'll do it for you.
Thank you.
I play it fast and loose with these comparisons.
Amazing. The sociopathic perception as it exists today is horrible. So nobody wants to be called that, but it's exactly how I felt. I have to act this way. Otherwise, I will not be given access to these things that I really should be allowed to have access to. Once the element of, who says you're supposed to act that way? Why don't you just start telling people, hey, I'm a sociopath and it's not what you think it is. Once I sort of realized that, the anxiety was all but gone.
Wow. So this is you kind of stepping into the truth. When does this happen? Does it start with Dave?
Probably.
And he didn't run out the door.
It really started with my father.
He's the one that sent you there.
Yes. Look, my father is colorful.
Sure.
And he has a very high tolerance for pathology.
Well, he's in the music business.
Yeah, and it's sort of a prerequisite. So with my father, it was always, you can tell me anything and we're going to find a solution. With David, it was more, you can tell me anything, but I'm not going to help you get out of trouble. We're going to stop you from putting yourself in situations where you get into trouble. So it really started with my dad giving me this space to say, I don't feel things like that. And I don't have shame. I don't connect to people the way that everybody else connects. And yet everyone is always, always expecting me to have these emotional reactions. And I'm tired. I just want to be alone all the time. And some of that, what you spoke to before, you acting out because you were angry, you suffered all of this, and now you're going to,
Take what's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was some of that creeping in.
Well, how could you not resent the you.
Right. And I guarantee you that this is what drives other sociopathic
darker-
behavior.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
For
Because
sure.
again, I had everything. I had all of these resources and people and relationships.
You had that you were born in a 1-bedroom trailer with 6 other kids.
Yes.
Now you're on a different path altogether. yeah.
Correct.
And so what's interesting is that moment where your father is accepting of this news. Of course, my first thought would be, oh, I would feel acceptance. But actually, I imagine you didn't feel acceptance, but you cognitively knew, well, he didn't reject me.
Correct.
So like the story I've been telling myself that I can't exist as myself without being rejected might have some holes in it.
Less rejection, because I didn't really ever care about rejection, but just prevent it.
You can't participate anymore.
Correct.
I mean.
Yeah.
Yes. The velvet rope is off limits to you. My goal was to work in the prison system. You're never going to get to do that. You're never going to get to be a lawyer. You're never going to get to have any of these things. So it was more that.
That makes sense. So Dad, you're like, okay, he's a chink in the logic you've assembled. And then Dave is another step in maybe a different direction. And then the two of you cobble together some kind of strategic stuff.
It was really me and my therapist seeing what worked and seeing what didn't, because there is no treatment plan for sociopathy. In fact, one of the reasons why it's rarely diagnosed is because this sort of unspoken understanding in the prison system and the juvenile delinquent system is as soon as a kid is diagnosed as antisocial or an adult is sociopathic or psychopathic, they're considered irredeemable. There's not going to be any treatment plan because they've already written it off. So it was really just us trying to figure out, based on my experience of things and what worked for me and what didn't, what's the best way. But the number one thing that was the most beneficial to me was normalization, not of behavior, but of feeling or lack thereof. Once it was, hey, you know what? I don't feel anything and that's fine.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Then your anxiety was gone. You had a practice.
I had a practice. I don't practice anymore.
Right. And I thought this was really interesting. There's a commonly held belief that a therapist should be extremely empathetic and emotionally invested. How did your approach differ? And what do you think is the strengths and the weaknesses of being a therapist who is on the sociopathy scale?
I remember sitting in clinical practicum with someone else who was talking about how they were seeing someone that they didn't like. I can't remember the exact example, but it's like, she talks about getting her nails done all the time. And I can't stand people that get their nails done all the time. But I just thought, how the fuck do you factor into this? You're not there to co-sign what this person's doing. And I remember a lot of work spent on helping people withstand their patient's transference, which is what the patient projects onto their therapist. So you're not really mad at me. You're mad at your mother, and you're projecting that on to me. And how we deal with this in therapy is for me to observe that and say, hey, I'm noticing the feelings you're having about me right now sort of resemble what we talked about last week. But the problem is a lot of times therapists, as soon as that hits them, they get defensive and angry.
Sure.
And so they have to find ways to compartmentalize their own emotions so that their emotions don't usurp those of their patient. I remember being like, I'm all set on this.
So when patients would like let it rip on you with some transference, you were unruffled.
Completely, but interested, observant. Hey, are you noticing that you just called me a bitch? But that's the same thing you used to call your mom, as opposed to, I can't believe this woman just called me a bitch. I didn't have those
You could see
reactions.
objectively.
Right. I was a volunteer grief counselor here and there, and showing up at places where people had just been through absolutely agonizing, traumatizing events, and being able to go in and sit and allow them to tell me everything in detail. And they didn't have to worry that I might start crying. You know, as a therapist, if you get emotional, you get emotional. But how I perceive that as problematic is if I start crying while you tell me your story, you're going to immediately want to caretake, or you're going to immediately want to make me feel better about the story you're telling me. And they don't have to worry about me. I'm a vessel. I'm not going to react to anything. You can tell me anything. I'm not going to judge you for it. I'm not going to have my own emotional reaction that matches yours.
Well, that's a sidebar. You found that as you've now moved through the world being very upfront about being a sociopath, people start telling you really crazy, random stuff. Like a guy at a party said, I think about killing my wife all the time.
Oh
I've
my
even like explored through a friend if they knew somebody.
Yeah.
Wow. What do you say to that?
I am like stifling a laugh. That's
No,
such a wild thing
because
to
it's
get
wild.
hit
It
with.
is
Yes.
wild.
I remember really leaning in and asking, oh, wow, yeah, tell me about that. Wanting him to feel just very comfortable, easy breezy. Now, the reason you know that is because it was discussed in an interview. And what did not get discussed was my reaction after the fact. And what I noticed is that a lot of people were very angry at me for not doing more to protect.
Intervene.
And yet, who's to say I didn't? I actually did. The reason that I kept that man speaking is because I wanted to find out where he lived. I wanted to know his wife's name. Tell me how you want to do it. Like, oh, tell me about her. She sounds awful. And I got him to tell me all these things so that when I left the party, I called every single person I could think of in law enforcement. I said, hey, this guy's been saying this. He's been doing that. And I remember stalking this woman to make sure that she was okay. But what was interesting to me is that by virtue of my sociopathic diagnosis, this woman heard this man say this at a party and she did nothing. When in fact, that's not true. But that assumption is automatically made because of my diagnosis.
Well, I could even gnarlier on that. There's a paradox there, which is the person that was judgmental of you is the exact person that no one would ever tell anything to. So they're not doing more either. They're just never getting the truth. Again, the parallel I saw was like, that's why I love AA, is you can go in there and every one of us is a scumbag. We've all done all the shit. And it is a place where you can be fucking honest and no one's there to feel morally superior to anyone else. It's such a breath of fresh air. Like I couldn't have made it to 49 without that place because of that. I had too much stuff to unload that I needed other people to be able to handle and not be judgmental of. So I personally see the value in that.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
We got to circle into Dave and how you did find a version of love that evolved through Dave, and then also having kids.
David.
David.
He hates Dave.
Oh, that's so funny. We have a friend named David who also hates Dave.
So at one time, my father's Dave, my brother's Dave, and my stepdad was Dave. So one was David, one was Dave, one was Barton, had to go by his last name. Obviously, the last Dave, my stepdad, had to go by Barton. But that's how it was decided. And I don't really know that any of them had a preference other than we had to distinguish them. Okay, so David, how do you come to experience something that you would label your version of love, or how did that grow?
Well, we met when I was 14, so really young. And I'm grateful for that because I don't think that we would have been a match later. But I remember at that time, I felt very isolated. I was looking for a buddy to kind of bounce stuff off of. And in that moment, he just happened to come into my life and he was that buddy. I could tell him anything and he didn't judge me for it. He just took it in and rolled with it. And he looked at my actions objectively and he would let me know if he didn't think something was a good idea, but it was not met with any type of negativity. So we dated for a summer. You know, I'm 14 years old, but it was so matter of fact, my feelings about him when I met him. I remember thinking, my name is Patric. I am attending this summer camp. I just met the guy I'm going to marry. I'm going to have pizza for dinner later. I remember writing it in my journal, but it didn't feel like what all of the girls that I knew, oh, you know, this romantic love, and I know I'm just going to marry him. It wasn't that. It was very matter of fact.
You didn't sit around wondering if he was thinking about you or talking about you.
No. And so when we broke up, it was more like that's weird. I really thought I was going to marry that guy. It's so
14,
strange. Yeah. I never had a feeling like that before, and it was so pronounced. I wonder what that was, because that was so true in the way it came through. But we never really lost touch, and he went one way, I went the other, and I lived an entire lifetime before we got back together. And when we did, we had this wonderful honeymoon period, and then reality set in, which is I have this personality disorder, and I'm really struggling with some things. And David really had a hard time not taking it personally. So for him, it was, I don't emote the same way he does. Therefore, I don't care about him as much as he cares about me. And everything was seen sort of through a very egocentric lens, not in the sense that he was in the wrong, but I think it's a very relatable feeling. If you go in for a big hug and the person doesn't want a big hug, your instant reaction is, oh, I guess she doesn't like me very much.
Of course.
But I'm just not that person. But I've never been that person. Yeah. So that was a struggle. It's you have to take yourself out of this equation. In order for you and I to work, you have to see that you are one type of person. I am one type of person. We love and demonstrate that love very differently. Neither way is right or wrong. It's just different. And if you are expecting that one day you are going to fix me, we should just
It's not
stop.
in the cards.
No, it's just not.
The irony is that's all relationships.
And that's what I've heard. Yeah.
It's just that it's so clear here and there's no arguing like, okay, you have this personality disorder.
It's almost helpful.
Exactly.
You're never going to get what you want.
Can't.
You either accept that and we move forward. But I think when you have this neurotypical relationship, there is this fantasy belief that no, you will end up manipulating them in a way that
Yeah,
you get exactly
we
what
have
you want.
limitations too, in the exact same way that also cannot be transcended.
That's why I wrote this book, because there are so many relatable elements to this. And I think that if the sociopathic camp and the non-sociopathic camp could just drop it for a second and get together and sort of talk, you would see how much we could learn from one another. But with David, he did have an argument, but you're doing illegal shit. And it's my job to protect you. It always came from a place of morality. The things you're doing are immoral, and I need to help you stop doing those things. So he had that really effective, logical argument that was tough to push back on.
Right.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I need to want to
I
stop
would've
doing
left
these
out
things
the
for
moral
myself.
part.
Sure.
I would have just said the things you're doing are illegal and are going to end up getting you incarcerated.
I would not argue with that.
Yeah. Let's leave morals out of it
Yeah.
for you.
Right.
Yeah, again, he's using an argument that works in
Italian
his
Catholic.
brain.
Italian Catholic.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is great. Talk about polar end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Emotional all the time.
And big emotions.
How did the children, so you already touched on it. You have a child and you're not feeling those feelings you see on TV or read about in books. Does that scare you at all? You don't get scared.
I was pissed.
Because that was your last ditch effort.
My
at
last
this.
one.
Yeah.
I was so angry at myself for allowing even the tiniest bit of light to shine through.
Some hope.
You should have known. And because you put your faith even slightly in that, this kid's going to suffer because now you're pissed off. And I was so angry. But then once that anger subsided, it was, oh, you know what? I just need to get to know his personality. And again, the curiosity, look at how he does this stuff and processes these things. It's so interesting. And then it was effortless after that. So many women talk about the baby stage. Like, I love the baby stage. I wish we could go back to the baby stage. No, I like having someone who can tell me what's going on, what's wrong, what they're feeling. I think my personality was definitely working against me in terms of a baby's crying and you have to figure out why. I don't know.
I can't read this.
Yeah, if there's any responsibility that feels uniquely centered in empathy, it is that one. You're unhappy. What is it? Did David need to be a little more involved?
He was so involved, and I'm really grateful because he was
The interpreter?
Yeah, he was.
Right, yeah.
And then once I was able to see enough of those interpretations, then I caught
You
on.
could log them.
Yes.
Were you afraid at all before you had your kids that those compulsions would arise in the same way or that you might want to hurt them or any of that?
I was so grateful that I did not have those feelings, but I do know that they exist. My bridge to empathy started with sociopathy. So the idea that there are other women who are afraid of potentially hurting their kids, I can extend that bridge because I know what it's like to have an impulse to do something that I know I don't really want to do.
Okay, my last question is, do you have gratitude for your sociopathy and do you have resentment?
I really have so much gratitude for my sociopathy and the opportunities I was given to not just experience it, but also observe it and come to understand it. Because one of the reasons why I wrote this book is because I'm trying to not discount the harmful extreme types, but to just include all of the other not so harmful extreme types to let people understand this personality type can be used destructively, but it can also be used constructively. I see my friends grapple with guilt, and I'm really glad that I don't. I see my friends grapple with shame. I have a friend who I don't know that she'll ever get out of this shame spiral that she's in every day over things that I perceive to be so trivial. Like, who gives a shit? It's okay. You shouldn't be suffering from this self-loathing for what? And I never had that I can recall. So I have so much gratitude. I do wish that I was able to connect with people. People tend to judge sociopaths because they don't connect to others. Sociopaths don't connect because they can't connect to others. And that is a big distinction. Don't and can't, one implies a choice.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that was hard for me. I remember graduating and having everybody coming up to me, "Oh, aren't you excited? Aren't you excited?" And I just didn't internalize any of that. But I wanted to be excited. I wanted to have those feelings. I see other people and how they're experiencing it. And it was very isolating. No, I'm not. And how do I explain this to you? You're coming in and you're so excited for me. I can't make you understand. I don't have that.
That happens with neurotypical people. It makes me think immediately of Wednesday.
Oh, Jenna
Ortega. She has this enormous meteoric rise and this obvious talent, and everyone around her is so excited. And the pressure of internalizing that excitement is not possible.
It's interesting that you should bring up Jenna Ortega and Wednesday, because people ask a lot about sociopaths in pop culture and how they're portrayed in cinema and television. How do I feel about that? And I've always been frustrated by these one-dimensional characters. And I said, but one has recently risen to the surface, and it's Wednesday.
That's so true.
You understand that Wednesday Addams checks every single box on the sociopathic checklist, but she's also capable of developing close relationships. She does it differently, but she does it. She loves her parents. She's sad when her pet is taken from her. It's not your typical pet, but she's sad nonetheless. She's loyal. She goes all in for her friends. And what people don't understand is that is sensationalized for sure, but that is a far more complete picture of the sociopathic composite. It's not just the bad stuff. It's all this other stuff too. When I saw that, I was really happy.
I love that show. It's one of my favorite shows. And to me, it seems so obvious why so many women would love that character, because it's completely liberated from people-pleasing societal pressures on women to make everyone feel comfortable all the time. And you can tell all neurotypical women are feeling the weight of that all the time. And they're looking at this person going like, could I really just maybe do exactly what I want and not have to fucking worry about how it's impacting everyone around me?
Children too. I can't tell you how much joy it brought me this Halloween to see all of these children, not just wearing her costumes, but taking on her personality.
Sure.
Like, I remember looking at one of them and smiling, and she just
Good for her.
Gals.
Stone-faced.
just went all in, committed. And I was thinking, I'm so happy that you have chosen this emotional outlier as your Halloween hero, and you are completely all in. It's also how I introduced this subject matter to my children. They have a peripheral understanding, a working knowledge of the work I do and the book that I wrote. But when we sat down to watch Wednesday, I just let them watch.
They connected the
They're
dots.
like, Mommy, this is like you. And I was like,
Really?
yes.
I'm the blonde version of her.
Yes, surely I'm not going quite as extreme as she is, but it's a really interesting cocktail of cold and warmth that she has. And it really is true.
You just reminded me, and I'm glad you just brought it up, because you said in the book it's very common for sociopaths to have the feelings we would expect for them to have about humans for pets.
Yes.
What is the explanation of that?
I can't tell you. There's been some research where some of the most prolific serial killers have had very intense bonds with their animals. And certainly there's also research that indicates that early psychopathic behavior typically presents in early mutilation of animals, torture of animals. And I'm not discounting that, but these are two truths that cannot be held. You can't say that this person is a psychopath, therefore they're completely incapable of any type of bond. They're harming these people, and yet the feelings they have about their pets is insurmountable emotionally to them. There needs to be more research to connect those dots.
Also, there's probably some temptation to weave in any observation as being a part of the ism, which also could have nothing to do with it. So I have my own armchair theory about people who love animals a lot. Some people push back on this, but I have found it interesting that if people have had really complicated relationships with parents that are very pluralistic or hard to figure out their real motives, the joy of being able to give love to something that's not going to try to manipulate you back. We do want to send love, and that it's just too high risk for a lot of people who have been in situations where they're just exploited every time they do that. That of course this thing would appeal to you. It's a completely non-manipulative creature that you're able to share love with without any fear of it being leveraged against you. And I could apply that to someone dealing with sociopathy or psychopathy. You still want to love something, but you can't do it in the way everyone else would accept it. And here's this very non-complicated furry thing that you can pick up and hold. It might not even be part of the condition, but also makes sense for the condition. I don't know.
They're not going to judge either. So you have all of these
Right.
antisocial tendencies. You have flat affect. You don't ever have to wear a mask around your animals. I have noticed that for me, Dogs are tricky because dogs,
They're empathic.
yes. And they really want to show you how much they love you all the time. And I have struggled with that. And I try to be mindful.
You had a ferret.
Oh, I loved that ferret. But see, she was so mischievous.
Do you love cats? She was a little shit, too.
Oh, God. She was such a thief. She would go
they
out
are
in
the
middle-
ultimate thieves.
Years after she died, I found treasure troves behind the couches, and she would gnaw the heads off of our Barbie dolls and drag them down the hall to whatever trove that she had decided she was going to put it. We'd never see it again. But they love shiny objects. So anything gold, silver, if you left it out, it would be gone.
It's gone.
She'd take it.
Aaron had 2 ferrets, and he'd have to pick up the couch like once a week to find everything in the house that was missing.
Oh my God.
So do you like cats, too?
I do.
For all the reasons I don't like cats, you like cats.
I'm sure they don't
They're
care.
indifferent
They're
to you.
indifferent.
Yeah.
They will eat your body within 24 hours of death. We just learned this.
100%.
Yeah, meal's a meal. They're not sentimental.
They
They're not
don't
like, this
care.
person wouldn't care. They're dead.
And I have the meanest cat alive. I shouldn't tell this story, but I'm going to.
Yeah, do it.
I-
Take the mask off. Let it rip.
I was bored, and there was this plea for a foster for kittens. Kittens, can we need somebody to foster kittens? And I've never fostered, but I was like, all right, what am I doing?
Let's even the scale.
Yeah, sure.
This will buy me something.
Yeah. So I bring these kittens home, and they don't have their mother. Their mother's gone. And one by one, they just start dying. And
boy.
I'm taking them to the rescue place, and I'm rushing them like, something's wrong. And every time I did, I was met with like, yeah, it happens. Like, you're not even going to try to save. And I remember one kitten was crying, obviously in pain, and I rushed to the rescue. They took the kitten back, and I heard the kitten in pain, and then it just stopped. And I'm like, you just killed that cat. And the guy came out and he goes, sometimes these things happen. And I just was like, got it, pal. So there was one cat left, black cat. And I was like, you're not dying on my watch. So I took him to my vet. I got him pumped full of every vitamin, mineral, antibiotic known to man. And I watched over him and got him to a point where he was stable, and then kept waiting for the rescue to call. They didn't call. And then finally, 6 months later, they call. And he's sitting in my lap purring. I have the rescue on the phone, and they're like, hi, we're calling about the last foster kitten. They said the other one's died. What happened to him? And I was like, he's dead.
Oh, wow.
Good. Well, I mean, look.
Because they said, we want you to bring him in for a checkup. And I was like, you're not getting your hands on this cat?
Yeah.
The last thing, what intrusive question would you want to ask?
What I would ask you?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We don't have to do this, but
I know
I'm
we
curious.
don't.
Yeah,
No. Well, I would want to know, what was your worst behavioral
Oh, sure.
choice?
Well, I tried to rob 7-Eleven.
How'd that go?
It didn't go well. I kept my helmet on, and I had a prop gun. I told him to give me the money, and he goes, fuck you. Clearly, this poor guy had been probably robbed several times. Like, somehow he knew I wasn't the shooting kind. And then I panicked and raced out of there, and I had to put a handkerchief over the license plate of my motorcycle. But I don't even know that that's the worst one. That one just comes to mind, where I could have gone to jail for sure over that. And a student at UCLA.
While you were a student?
Yeah.
Was this the 7-Eleven in Westwood?
No, this was a 7-Eleven at Wilshire and probably 7th-ish in Santa Monica. And I specifically went there because I never went to that one. I always went to the one at like 20th in Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yeah.
So many. Terrible. Endless.
I'm just curious, because that would be my deep dive. Talk to me about everything. And it's tricky because these invasive questions, people don't want to answer, or they want to take a beat before they answer. And I get that.
But actually, like, if we were at a dinner party, I actually would live for this. I'm virtually doing the same thing you do. Which is like, great. You're this is like, let's get into the trauma. What happened in childhood? Something happened.
Yeah.
What happened? I'm almost bored by anything short of that.
It's interesting, especially when it comes to destructive behavior, because to your point, you knew that what you were doing was wrong.
I covered my license plate.
But my understanding is nothing exists in that moment between the behavior and what's on the other side, which is the alcohol or the drugs or whatever it is you're after. But there is something that exists in that. It's almost like the trapeze where you let go of one and you haven't quite made it to the next. That's the part I want to explore.
Yeah.
Because there's so much in that moment when you were in that 7-Eleven and the guy screamed, fuck you. There's so much more in there that was happening. And I would want to dig into all of that.
Well, that was one that really reeked of my sense of justice. I was obsessed with this movie Thief by Michael Mann. My pattern was I would get hammered, my girlfriend would go to bed, I'd get even more hammered, I'd watch Thief, and then I'd become obsessed with the notion of like, I deserve to have money and I don't know how to get it and I'm going to take it. I just have to be willing to do it. And I'm a fucking pussy if I don't do it. And you're a coward and all this stuff about being a boy too and not tough enough or brave enough. And I would just whip myself into this lather of like, what a fucking scared little boy I was if I didn't go just take what I know I want. And I'd be hammered and I would just make these decisions like, now's the time.
So you don't get the money. You leave the 7-Eleven.
The headline's the 7-Eleven. The real story is the fact that I didn't T-bone a car and die riding my motorcycle. Because now I'm like adrenaline through the roof. I'm running away from a 7-Eleven I just tried to rob. Him saying fuck you was a little sobering. Now I'm racing away from 7-Eleven. I've got about, 12 blocks to go. And part of my brain screaming, don't drive erratically, you'll get pulled over. The other part is like, fuck everything, get home and get off the street and get into your bed and lock the door. And let's hope that nothing ever comes of this. And so that ride home is probably the most dangerous aspect of the story. I was riding as if I was already being chased by the cops.
See, that's so interesting because what I interpret is that there was some part of you that wanted to be chased by the cops. You had no control over your addiction. But if they had picked you up and put you in a jail cell, you would have had no choice.
They would have controlled it for me.
Yeah, because the drive out, when you know that you're basically putting a target on yourself by driving that way.
Well, yes, but I don't think I wanted to get arrested.
I don't think it was conscious.
Yeah. I'm doing something that's counter to the goal of not getting arrested. To get into a detail, the plan was I would get that money, I would drive a block, I would rip the bandana off the license plate. Because clearly if I'm driving through Santa Monica at 2 a.m. with a bandana over my license plate, I'm going to get pulled over. So part of the plan was to, the second I was out of frame of any cameras or anything, I was going to get that bandana off. But then once I was on the bike, we're like, nope, stopping for the bandana is more risk. We just have to go 1,000,000 miles an hour and get off the fucking street.
What is that expression? The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And I think that your mind was probably acting as a really great servant in that moment where it was doing the things that your logic was telling you to do. But I remember there is a scene when I made the decision to jump out of this second or third floor balcony at UCLA. And I knew I wasn't going to die. But I remember afterwards, this fleeting thought is, I was hoping I'd break a leg because I was thinking, if I could just be in a wheelchair, I couldn't do these things. It was so fleeting. But again, I obviously didn't want that because there are much more effective ways to make sure your legs get broken than jumping out of a window that I knew goddamn well wasn't going to deliver. But there's some part where that unconscious part of your brain is working, but the conscious part is working harder to make sure that you don't self-harm.
Yeah. Where you and I would differ is that hovering above all of this at all time was my mom.
Wow.
While I'm racing home, I'm like, my mother would be like, what happened? I gave him everything and I loved him. And why is he being this dangerous and he's going to die? Like the voice of my mom and the responsibility to my mom, and my mom would want better for me. Like the mom was like constantly
That does change things.
joining me on the motorcycle ride, despite what it looked like.
Have you ever diagnosed someone else as sociopathic just from being around them?
Yes. The interesting thing about the PCL, which is the assessment used for diagnosing psychopathy and sociopathy, it's a conversation that you have with someone else. That person doesn't realize. Otherwise, you could say, have you ever done this? And they're going to, it's
Lie.
bias.
Yeah.
But you have a conversation with someone and you have those questions in the back of your head, but they don't know you have those questions. So you're just rolling through, asking and getting this information. So have I issued a formal diagnosis to someone else who didn't necessarily want it? No, but there have been tons of times where I've been sitting across from someone and I'm thinking, oh yeah.
Yeah, that was the same question I have. Was like, within 30 seconds, I know someone's an addict.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to. The laws of AA, like only you can diagnose yourself as being an addict. But I'm like, yeah, this person, they're wrestling with this.
You know what it is? It's the lights are on, but no one's home, kind of, where you're saying all the right things and doing all the right things, but you can't tell me your kids' birthdays. Just little.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh.
You weave it through really chill. Like you
March
get them.
27th and December 19th.
You get them talking, they're going to fall for the bait of, oh yeah, a good person loves their kids. You get them really focused talking about that. And it's like, oh, that's amazing. Wow. They sound like an Aries. When is their birthday? And then you see they have no
little
idea.
panic.
And then the answer is, oh, sometime in the summer. And again, you normalize it where it's just like, yeah, totally. Everybody forgets their, it's no big deal. And again, is there manipulation at play with that type of discussion? Yes. Would I do that if I was in a clinical setting? If I was in the prison system, maybe?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
No, if I was sitting across from someone who was earnestly trying to figure it out, no, you don't employ those tactics, but that's how that test is designed to be administered. It's designed to be administered in a way the person on the other end does not know they're receiving it.
It's intrinsically manipulative.
Yes. In my case, I did know that I was receiving it, but I didn't know what the questions were. It was just a conversation.
Does your guard go up when you recognize someone else is sociopathic?
For me, it boils down to how aware are they?
Right.
So if you're sitting across from someone and you can tell right away they're an addict, if 10 minutes after you make that assessment, they say to you, just so you know, I'm an addict. You're like, okay, so they're on the path. They're doing the work.
So someone that's completely unaware of their own sociopathy is probably a little scarier for you, even though you don't get scared, but whatever word we would use other than scared. Avoidant,
Or
yeah.
just,
mindful.
yes, a lot of this personality type speaks to people who would not really believe that they... So I don't know if you're familiar with the term self-objectification. Do you know what that is?
No.
When you self-objectify someone, basically, if you're my self-object, you are not a person with a life outside of me. You are just an extension of me.
This is what narcissists do, right? Like you are a
Right.
device by which I see my reflection or something.
Correct. So that's really what pings for me, because that also tracks with sociopathy. Not, okay, so let's see how I can get this person to do my bidding, but they truly don't see you as someone other than them.
That exists once they stop looking at you.
So if they are engaging in behavior that is harmful to them, they will also be engaging in behavior that's harmful to you because you are an extension of them. So that's what pings for me.
Yeah.
And just that poverty of insight also, where you can tell this person, sometimes they're aware that the things that they're saying are lies, but other times that's not true. And I bet it's not even registering for you that it's not
Interesting.
true because you've told this lie so many times that it has become real for you. I have a really, really hard time with denial of anything.
You wrote the best New York Times piece about your husband. Does this overlap with this?
Yeah. Oh, I wasn't going to get into it, but we can absolutely
yeah,
can.
yeah.
I really like to know how to orient myself in a situation. So if I'm around someone who is in complete denial of something that is absolutely clearly going on, it's problematic because I like nothing's off limits. Let's just talk about it. So choosing to deny reality doesn't make that reality any less real. It just makes you less safe within that reality. And that's how I feel around people who don't have that self-awareness to understand, no, this is real. They're so attached to the lie that it's no longer a lie for them.
Well, they're having confirmation bias, so they're excluding everything that would counteract their lie or story. You can call a story a lie or a lie a story. And then they're seeing proof of it where it doesn't even exist sometimes.
No, and they're only going to seek out people that,
Confirm.
and those who don't are the enemy and need to be eliminated at all costs.
Yes.
I don't like to be anywhere near that dynamic, which really was a problem for me. Here is my husband who's having feelings for another woman, and I really understood it. She is neurotypical. She's caring. She perceives his needs long before he does, but not in an oversteppy way.
Yeah.
Just super nurturing.
She just is who she is.
Yes. And I can tell that there's some part of him that's like, in another life, this would have been my wife. And by the way, in another life, it very well could have been, maybe should have been. And I wanted to talk about it. And it was denial. Just no. And that was a problem because it's, okay, so let me get this straight. I have to be hyper aware of everything that's going on with me. I have to be hyper honest about it. I have to tell you when I'm having destructive impulses. I have to deny those destructive impulses. I'm spending all this time trying
When
to
you
figure
do
it
something
out.
naughty, you have a little coin you
Yep,
put on his
yep.
desk to say, like, I've done something naughty.
Yes.
We can talk about it or not. He sometimes chooses to not. I
Yep.
think that's
No,
generous.
he actually,
Rarely does that.
yeah, he really
Okay.
doesn't.
You're being kind in the article.
He wants to know.
He always wants to
Yeah.
know. But that's the thing. He wants to know every little thing. So that is my requirement. And this is the softball of softballs. You're obviously having feelings about this woman. We can talk about it. It's okay. And just, nope. And that was really tough because, so what am I supposed to do now? Pretend I don't notice this? I'm not upset by it. This is his stuff. He is an Italian Catholic and he was raised as many people were raised to believe that marriage is a sacred institution. And if you find yourself so much as half glancing at another attractive person, something's wrong.
Talk about guilt. He's obviously riddled with guilt, something
Yes.
you aren't feeling. So
Correct.
it's confusing.
His guilt is keeping him from talking about it with me. And he's not aware of that either. Whereas I'm someone that's, if you find someone attractive, let's talk about it. Let's have that conversation because we're all human beings. And my understanding is that animals that naturally mate for life are never tempted to go like
Right. They're not fighting it all day long.
right. The American cranes, they mate for life. I don't see those cranes like sneaking out and then coming.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
what that
yeah.
tells me is human beings have to choose monogamy. It's not something that comes easily. You have to work at it.
Here we go. I get to say it. As an anthropology major, our history is dominated by not monogamy. So yeah, it's a choice. Esther Perel says it best. Monogamy is something, basically, everyone wants it and everyone's betraying it. She says it very eloquently.
I think betrayed is spot on though. And I think it's eloquent too. I just wish that more people would acknowledge that.
Oh, universally reviled and universally practiced. Cheating.
Yeah. The concept of love comes up so much with sociopathy. And when I've asked how I experience it, I equate it to homeostasis, something that's mutual beneficial to both parties. It's not ownership. It's not possession. It's not ego driven. There's no power dynamic in it. And I feel as soon as power comes into play, it's not love anymore. Now it's dominance. And I feel that jealousy and possessiveness stems from that because what it boils down to is if my wife is looking at another man, then she's going to give her attention to that other man. The attention that she's giving to me will be taken away. So what that says is, I need her attention. You need that attention to fill some void in yourself. It's no longer about me at all. It's about what you need from me to feel better about yourself. It's that I feel less than if you find another man attractive, when in reality, it really has nothing to do with you. I like ravioli and I also like manicotti. Like these are two things that can coexist, which is not to say it should be a free-for-all. If you make a commitment to somebody, you should stick to that commitment or you should let that person know I'm no longer interested in having this commitment. I
Right.
believe that. But I also believe it's important to be honest about how you feel. If my husband finds someone attractive at a bar, I always say a bar, I mean, we rarely go, but like even on television, I encourage him to talk to me about it because I want him to feel like he can share that. It's okay. The priest isn't going to storm into the room. This isn't a test that you're going to fail. You're allowed to find other women attractive. It's okay. And I'm also allowed to find other people attractive. That's usually met with, no, you're not. But
Right.
again, that's something else we can explore. Okay, so let me break this down. Why am I not allowed? Well, because then I will be marginalized. So it's not about me, it's about you. And it's just interesting. And I think if more people had these open conversations, relationships would thrive because as it stands right now, the second you start to develop feelings for someone, the marriage is over, or I've done something, or he's done something, when really it's just normal.
Well, this has been a fucking party, Patrick. I've really enjoyed
me
it.
too.
Sociopath, a memoir. I think people are going to really gobble this up. I found myself like, fuck, am I interested in
Yeah.
this? It's like such a privileged bit of access.
Thanks for sharing.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad I wrote it as much for sociopathic individuals as I did neurotypical, because it's just as important for neurotypical to understand this as it is for neurodivergent people to understand it, because we
Yeah.
have to coexist.
More and more we're learning, like, by God, this fallacy of norm. It's like,
Neurotypical. It's not even a thing.
20% we found out in the last thing is neurotypical. Then you add in this 5% or whatever.
It's just all
like
made up. It's like we're all very unique.
a lucky handful of us get to be, quote, normal.
Yeah.
And
Whatever that
I'm still
means.
not even sure who's normal. I
Yeah.
think Rob's normal. Doesn't seem to be an alcoholic. We'll find out. Patrick, thank you so much for coming in and talking about this. This is so interesting.
Thanks, guys. I really loved it.
Stay tuned for the fact check so you can hear all the facts that were wrong.
3, 2, 1, and action on recording. Everyone, this one's for real. Action on recording.
Nervous.
About action on recording?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Scared. It's gloomy out.
It flipped on a dime.
It's been so sunny and nice.
It was 80 for like 3 days in a row, even maybe 82 or 3. Yesterday when I hiked, it felt like it was 90 out because the sun was out so bright.
Yeah.
And I was sweaty wearing my rucksack,
Oh my.
which makes my back sweat even more because there's contact
Oh, you're wearing a backpack?
Yeah, do you know what a rucksack is?
I thought a rucksack was like that stick with a bag on it.
Oh, like a hobo carries?
Yeah.
Oh. By the way, do those only exist in cartoons, or do you think people ever really had it? It's like a handkerchief tied to a stick to carry all
I
your
bet at
stuff.
some point it was real because it was a way to carry.
Yeah.
It's smart.
And remember what hobo stands for? Do you remember?
Oh, gosh. I forget.
Homeward bound.
Oh,
It was like
yeah.
people riding the rails coming home from war,
Yes, I forgot that.
which is kind of a nice,
It is nice.
like it got so negative, hobo. But a rucksack is a backpack that you put weight in.
Oh.
Yeah. So it has a plate inside the backpack, like a 40-pound plate,
Oh, my God.
so that I'm heavier when I hike.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. It's getting really extreme.
It really is. And it's kind of interesting.
yeah.
'Cause
You
I
feel
did-
it?
Yeah, because I did 6 miles, ding, 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 the dip from all the travels. It's like I'm just like fighting to get to homeostasis. I feel like that's like my tactic.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But Monday I hiked 6 miles up to the very top and then lifted the next day. Then next day, rucksack 4 loops of the rock path, which is a
Okay.
thing. And now 4 is my record.
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm pretty physically exhausted all day long.
Right.
And then I was lifting this morning and I was sore.
Sure.
And then I was like, is there a specific day you feel your age? Like, well, you've peaked. You're going to have to lay off from here. I don't think I'm there, but it crossed my mind.
Yeah.
Like when
When
sure
is
it's different
enough?
Well, not that, just, and I'm sure it's different for everybody, but obviously at 75 years old, I'm not going to be able to squat as much as I can right now.
Yeah.
And then when is that moment where you go, oh, from here on out, I'm gonna actually be doing less weight. And this week, I a little bit felt like, oh, I think I might have topped out what I'm capable of.
Well,
But I like it.
that's good.
It's very distracting. And then you're in a gentle coma afterwards. You've yet to really experiment with this.
Not that way. No.
Well, I guess back in Soul Cycle days.
Soul Cycle days, but I was never one to do like doubles. People would do doubles.
Like 2 different sessions a day.
Yeah, or back to back.
Oh, back to back.
That was never for me.
Right.
I mean, I would, within the workout, increase the weight or make the resistance
And
harder.
you would be like, oh my God, I don't think I can handle
Yeah.
more or keep this up.
Yes, and running has that element to it.
It sure does.
But-
when's the last time you jogged?
I haven't jogged in a minute.
It's usually a Christmas activity
I've
for
been
you.
on my walk. I just mainly been walking.
Okay.
It does hurt more now.
Running?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
those-
think that's an age thing.
Does it
a
hurt in
little
your
bit.
knees?
Yeah, shins.
Low back?
Sometimes low back.
Low back, shins.
Yes.
Shins, though, is temporary.
Well, I used to get really bad shin splints.
But when you get them, like when you very first started resuming an exercise and then after a week, you would never get them again?
No.
Oh, because that was always my experience with running. Like if I hadn't jogged in a while and then I went jogging, I would have shin splints, but then that was it. It was just that initial dropping back in.
I'm just walking for now.
Okay.
Stick with my walking for now.
Do you ever ponder on it? Like, oh, maybe I should
Do a rucksack.
push myself, like hike really hard up the hill or something. Do you ruminate on it or fantasize about it? Does it cross your mind ever? Or just no way?
It's not like it doesn't ever cross my mind, but it's never like I want to push myself. It's maybe I should probably mix it up. Maybe I should go on a hike or do Pilates or something.
Yeah.
But the goal isn't to like push myself. It's to increase the amount and diversity.
Well, I think you have a very healthy relationship with it. It's just like keep moving.
Yeah, always move. Find a way to move.
Yeah. And I think that's very sustainable and probably very healthy.
I hope so.
But I have the mindset where it's like, it's probably like original sin. It's like an atonement. I have to atone daily to earn any joy.
Yeah.
I think it's like a baseline thought of mine. In fact, I was talking to my therapist this week. He was asking if I ever think about drinking. And I said, I don't ever think
Yeah.
about drinking. And I said, because it's so cemented in my head, it's like I drink, then I will buy Coke, then I will be gone for 3 days. So it doesn't sound good at all to be gone for 3 days.
Right.
And then it kind of got into like why that was my drug of choice, drinking. And I was saying what drinking did for me, and I very clearly remember it, is 3 beers in when I'd start feeling a buzz, the weight of you have to succeed and you have to be productive and you have to accomplish and you have to, that's the only time that ever came off my shoulders. And it was like, oh, fuck, this feels nice to not be fucking worried about what I'm accomplishing or, you know, doing or bettering. And that was the real joy of, if I had to isolate its singular appeal to me, it's that sensation. When you get buzzed, what do you think
It's
dissipates?
It depends on if I'm healthy mentally. It really is just like added fun. It really can be that for me.
Sure.
Where it's just, we're loose and it's fun.
We're goose.
Chatty. We're goosey.
We're gander. We're goosey gander.
4 hours goes by. We've been chatting.
Yeah.
That's best case, right? Like that was summer of
but
Cara.
hold on. There might be a clue right there.
Okay.
So the notion that 4 hours goes by, because you say this a lot. You say like time travels differently. It's a big part of it. So I'm wondering if this passage of time, which happens effortlessly, it makes me think maybe that your relief is anxiety.
Well, for sure. For sure.
Like you feel a sense of like, oh, I don't have to be thinking about all the variables and what I'm supposed to be planning for.
Yeah, I think it does mute anxiety. Well, the flip side of that is I like that if I have to work, that
it speeds that up.
Yeah, like if I'm editing and I have a glass of wine, that feels like much more tolerable.
Yes,
and it does.
Well, drinking on the job in general does help it. I think that's why I like guys throwing hammers, have some beers.
But
and,
it's
and
that.
I used to drink when I roofed, and it was like, oh yeah, this is totally tolerable with a little buzz.
Yeah, I think there's something else with editing. It's kind of like, you know, you're writing aphorism about homework. It's that. I mean, there's there's always.
Yep. By the way, I don't know what the word aphorism means.
I think
I'm pretty impressed that you just dropped that in the sentence.
What if I'm?
No,
I could be wrong.
Let
Let's
me
look it up.
affirm that aphorism is right.
A pithy observation that contains a general truth.
Oh, I got to work that in. Aphorism.
Try it today.
Okay.
Anyway, sometimes the idea of that, of just like, oh my God, this is
endless.
This is literally endless. I could / should be doing this at all times. Is very daunting and overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so the drink makes that less so.
Yeah.
But I know that's bad. Like I know I'm using it to just like get through my life.
Right. Well, your job.
I know, but
Yeah.
a
What's the-
job that is my life. And
Yeah.
this job gives a lot, right? But it's time consuming.
Right.
So I'm aware that that's like not so healthy, that piece of it. But then the social element, I think is fine.
Yeah. I think it's all fine. I was just curious if you had
I don't think it's
to
all fine.
articulate what the sensation was. If you thought of it instead of a new sensation being given to you and more another sensation disappearing.
I think it's
Like it's an
that.
interesting framework to think about
Yeah.
what it is. I always just thought about it as it gave me a buzz, right? It
Right.
gave me this physical feeling.
Yeah.
But I do think in retrospect, really, it took away something
Well, I
that
think
was very
that's
pleasant
the
to have.
unhealthy part, right? Again, same with the work. Like it takes away the overwhelm.
Yes.
It makes it manageable.
Well, good. That's another part I love about drinking is it makes me optimistic. So like there's a pessimism about the daunting endlessness of the editing. And then once a little buzz, you can kind of be optimistic about it. It's like, yeah, and then I do it and then it's over. And then
Yeah.
and I always get
guess
through
so.
it and whatever.
Yeah.
I always will.
But when it's healthy or when I'm social and it's just like fun and it's summer of Cara, it's giving me something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's both, I guess.
So the time thing, I get the time thing when we're recording, which I find
Yeah.
to be very pleasant. Like
Yeah.
time is in a different, it's like enters a different structure.
You're escaping it, kind of.
Yeah, or the many, many times I look, because I'm sure we've gone 45 minutes and we've gone an hour and 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Like that is very pleasant.
Yeah.
We just had a
Flow.
guest. We had a guest this week who looked down and he was like, what? Like it
was
really
mad.
shook him. Well,
Yeah.
he has his own show.
Yeah.
And he says he's super conscious of time when he's recording his show.
Yeah.
And he always feels like they can barely get to an hour.
Exactly.
And then he looked down and we had been talking for an hour and 45 minutes. He's like, wow, but I think that's very pleasurable.
It is. It is. I think so too.
Speaking of which, I'm going to lose sense of time on Monday. I'm looking very forward to it. Because I'm going to be riding Coda for the first time.
Tell me about that.
Tell me about your Coda.
I don't think most people know about that.
Well, Coda is Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. It's where they have the Formula One race. I've been to the track now 6 times as a spectator. It's a gorgeous track. And I'm going for the MotoGP race on Sunday, but then on Monday, I'm going to do a track day there, which I'm so excited about.
So you're going to ride motorcycles Monday.
Ride motorcycles Monday.
And-
And time on that day will be very abstract. But I'm really pumped because I've just been watching the track on TV and in life for so long. And to get to
Yeah.
ride it, that straightaway's nuts. Uphill. It's going to be fun and it's going to be very weird because you'll be going apex speed on the straightaway. And then as you're approaching turn 1, which is a super insane tight, it's more than 90 degrees. You're going to want to get on the brakes because it's approaching, but you're going uphill. So you can wait much later because it's uphill. And that's going to be a whole thing to figure out.
Okay.
And it's Steve's 50th birthday party weekend.
Oh,
Yes.
that is fun. Are you going to be careful?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Mostly because I have a whole week in Austin.
Yeah, and you want to enjoy it.
Exactly. I want to go to Barton Springs every day.
Yeah. Okay. I
All
can't
right.
say I'm not anxious.
Okay.
But I am excited for you.
Okay. I'm very excited for me.
Are there other friends going besides Steve?
It did cross my mind, like, I wonder if Nicholas Holt will be there. If you're an actor and you ride, so I think I might see other actors,
fun.
which would be fun. And there probably will be some pros because the race will have been the day before. So maybe even the Aprilia team riders will be there.
Fun.
Very exciting.
Yeah. So that's what alcohol did.
Mm-hmm.
What did pills do?
Well, pills are so stupid. That's why it's really shocking I got addicted to them.
Well, it's not shocking.
you're-
It's a literal epidemic.
I know. But like when I just compare the results of either alcohol and cocaine to opiates or Xanax, so many people are addicted to benzos. And it's like, for my money, it's such an unpleasant, it's not like a super pleasant experience.
Yeah.
But I guess it's personality type. Like
Yeah.
I'm sure for some people, benzos give them what alcohol gave me. And then opiates feel good when they first come on. And then they generally just don't work beyond that.
Yeah.
I guess alcohol's a little similar in that. Like that buzz is one thing, and then the inebriation's a different thing.
Yeah. I mean, it just also chemically is just so addictive. That must just be it.
I think the unique thing about opioids is your body adapts so quickly to it. That's the crazy, weird trap of them. You know, if you did 2 Vicodin every day for a week, next week you wouldn't feel it.
Yeah.
Whereas your alcohol tolerance does not change like that. I'll tell you, the appeal of the opiates is kind of like wearing noise-canceling headphones.
Yeah. You can just escape.
Yeah, it's just like you're present, but also at any moment, you don't have to hear all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
You can kind of like be in one place in your mind, even though you're going through the motions outwardly. But you're kind of noise-canceling headphones. And then there's some body sensation when it first works.
It's all pretty sad.
Yeah.
Like all of it. The drinking, everything.
Yeah. It means,
We just like can't be in our present life.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. I foresee a time, maybe, I don't know, where I'm not engaging in
Yeah.
any substances. I don't know when that will be, but I do think
Definitely not in New York.
it's not
It's not the place. No.
It's not. It's not that soon, I don't think. But
Right. You know
I
what's
think I have
interesting?
enough evidence that it's not something I should do forever. It's not that good for me.
I will say this. You will experience. So I had quit many times for 30 days. Like you've done that before.
Yeah.
Quitting for 30 days is much harder than quitting for good
Yeah.
because you don't at all ruminate and fantasize about when it's over
Yeah.
because this is not over.
I know.
And so you just really like, again, I don't think about drinking. This is not, it's never happening. So it's not like, oh, in a month I get to do it or in 2 months or this summer I get to do it on this trip. I don't get to do it.
Yeah.
And it kind of shuts that off finally where you don't even consider it.
Yeah, I know. I think I'm going to get to a point. I've dipped in and out of this sort of recently. There have been times where I am drinking and I don't know why. Like, I don't want it, but I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And so
I know
that part is,
And you're a little drunk and you're like, why do I do that?
I'm just like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? I woke up this morning, I knew I didn't want to do this, and here I am doing it.
Don't you think it's that feeling of like, here I am again.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that feeling. Here I am again.
Yeah. So I think and like I said, I think it's starting to happen where I don't want it anymore.
Right.
And so I feel like once that happens, then I'll probably be like, it's okay. I think it's time to not do this anymore.
It's time for a new experiment.
Yeah. But then I think about my house and
Oh, yeah.
garden martinis.
Oh, yeah. Poolside stuff.
Exactly. That sounds so fun.
Yeah. It will be.
Maybe when I'm 40.
You'll quit at 40.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to say any of that. I don't know. I think I sound really alcoholic-y right now.
do?
I think I sound like that right now.
No, I'm asking. You do think that?
I think I sound like that right now, yeah. I don't think I am one, but I think that's how this conversation sounds. Like, I'm aware of that, but I'm still choosing to say it because I think it's just the truth. It's just my
Do you talk to other friends about this? See, I have no frame of reference. Like, I don't know how to evaluate what they think about people who drink casually. Like, I'm almost curious, does everyone who drinks think, should I drink?
question this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, well, certainly I think for people who it's like a couple times a month they're at a dinner with friends and they drink, clearly they don't ever think about it, right? Other than they might go like, oh, I kind of don't feel good the day after I drank.
Right.
But I don't have any experience really with anyone who's like clearly not an addict, yet drinks more than they want to. It's interesting.
I just wonder, like, is everyone, I mean, there's obviously a spectrum, but I think everyone, maybe not everyone. I think most
so. I
people
think
have
there's a
the
lot of
capacity.
I think there's a lot of people that are like really non-addictive people.
To anything, though? I feel like most people have something.
That they soothe with.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
I think so.
Yeah. I have seen non-addictive people who also are very into their phone. It's really weird I'm not more into my phone, to be honest.
Yeah. That's good.
I'm too busy hiking.
Ruck Sacking.
Too busy lifting and moderating my protein intake. Had a very fun breakfast with Nate this morning.
Oh, that's so nice. Where'd you guys go?
It's so stupid that we already know this. We've been told by so many experts. Like
About male friendship.
Yeah, men should like go hang with men once in a while and talk.
Yeah.
And even though I know that, because we are so social with a very mixed group.
Yeah.
So I see men all the time.
Yeah.
But the one-on-one is pretty powerful.
Big
Especially
time.
with Nate, because we've been friends for 30 years
Yeah.
now. And we have so much fun at these fucking breakfasts. I can't believe we're just laughing hysterically. We're whispering a lot to each other and our faces are really, like, I imagine what it looks like watching Nate and I have breakfast. Must look insane. So we get really close and we're like whispering something and we don't want anyone in the restaurant to hear. And then we're laughing so hard we can't pull it together.
Where'd you guys go?
Cafe 101.
Oh, fun.
In fact, there was an armchair in there who's recently moved to LA, and she said she had come there because she heard us talking about it.
Yes, that happened to me the other day at Cara.
I did.
Yeah, it's really fun.
It is. What's nice is we can stand by our recommendations. People like these places.
Exactly.
These are good wrecks.
Yeah, they're good wrecks.
Yeah.
That's so fun. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you make time for that. I think it's important. That's a ding, ding, ding. Friendship, social connection.
Who's this?
This is for Patric.
Oh,
Also, her name's Patricia, but she goes by Patric.
yeah. Once again, I have not stopped talking about that
Same.
interview since it happened. And of course, and she was right to say, like, we're as interested in you as you're as interested in us. We're so interested. I don't think I've ever talked to people about a guest we had where they wanted to hear every single
Of
thing.
course.
Yeah. Oh, Jennifer.
Oh my God. I almost choked on my smint.
My smint.
Yes. It's so interesting to us. But what I also know, because everyone who I've told,
Yeah.
at some point in the conversation, they say, and I said it in this, and you said it. Am I a sociopath?
Yeah, right.
Like everyone's so worried
Uh-huh.
that they themselves are, which I think is hilarious. But I think that's good that we're aware of, okay, so there's this type.
Uh-huh.
I think wanting to know where you sit on that is good.
I also think wondering if you're a narcissist. Because like I thought one of the most interesting things she said was when she's pretty sure she's talking to another sociopath, her main interest is, do they know?
Exactly.
Which I found to be fascinating. Because
Yeah.
I guess maybe I would have assumed you would know. But no, of course you
No.
don't necessarily know. So then she's like, naturally, Patric's like, do they know? And then two, are they working on it?
Exactly.
Do they have a system?
Which is why I'm really glad we had her on, and I'm glad she's doing what she's doing, because no one knows these things about themselves, I think, for the most part. And so if you start to pay attention and you understand things about yourself,
Yeah.
and if you're listening and you think, I think this really could be me,
Yeah.
as she said, she thinks of it as an emotional learning disorder.
Uh-huh.
And she said there are ways to learn it. It's just not the way a neurotypical brain works. So you can figure it out, but you have to know that
Yeah.
it's harder for you or it's going to be different for you.
Because the one I wonder about is I don't assume narcissists know they're narcissists.
Most don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really,
That's the other one I think people are good to be asking themselves.
Definitely.
Because I'm constantly making sure I'm not.
it's a really, I shouldn't say
Prevalent?
that. It's just a bad one. Like they're all, look, I don't want to say anything's bad, but again, here we go. We can't say anything's bad. We can't say narcissism is bad. Like
I know.
it is.
I'm glad we talked about it with her. And she agreed, though. Because I said to her,
agreed.
like, now I'm going to be compassionate to sociopaths. And now I don't have anything. And she laughed. She liked that.
Yeah,
that was
she
a
said,
relief.
like, I'm not saying, she's like, this can be very, very destructive.
And dangerous.
And dangerous.
Yeah.
So can narcissism. And yeah, I read a bunch of books on it.
On narcissism?
These things are so deep. Like when she talked about, now I'm forgetting the phrase, but how people are just extensions of you, right? Like
Yeah. Mhm.
that's how you see the world. And I think we all do that to an extent. That's part
People
of just,
I think she said that, like, they're a projection of themselves, maybe.
right. I think we all sort of do that a little bit, but I think narcissists do it to a much higher degree, and it feels like sociopaths do that to a high degree as well. I think it's really hard to know when you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, I think the most fun I've had talking about this episode was with Charlie.
Oh,
Because, and he was right. Like, I would say one thing, and then he would say, well, but do you think she really...
is one.
Well, there was that. That was the example I give. Like, I did lay in bed that night, and I just thought this would be a very interesting way to go sell a book and to be
I thought
interviewed
the
at the New
same
York Times.
I thought the same thing.
It's very interesting. But then I thought, but you'd kind of have to be a sociopath to lie that blatantly in public.
Yeah.
So then it becomes a circular thing where you can't find your footing. You're like, well, even if the whole thing was a lie, then I think almost that would, like, I don't have the capacity to do that.
Like, she would it be taking on
We
a
found
full
out
identity.
I never had drank in my life. Like, this whole thing was a ruse. I think wouldn't that be pretty significant proof that I was a sociopath?
I don't know.
That I just
because
have
there's-
no guilt about lying completely for years.
But you might have guilt. It might.
But she doesn't have guilt or
Well,
shame.
she says, I mean, look, by the way, I believe her.
Yeah, I do
this
too. I
isn't-
do too.
But now we're in this new thought, you know.
You can't help but think about these things. And then you play through all these different things and you're like, yeah, it's really interesting. At some point, you just have to believe the person who's telling you that they like to lie and that they will not feel bad at all if they lie to you. It's a very, and by the way, fun and novel, interesting experience. I loved it.
I loved it too. We were done. She went to the restroom and we went outside. We said, we'll meet you outside for some pictures. And then she came out and you joked, or I think Rob said actually, I think he joked, like, what if she goes through our stuff? And then so you said to her, you could have gone through our, or you said something.
I said, did you go through our stuff? So, but
yeah, she
really,
said, you don't think I didn't?
but even what I liked about her is I felt very comfortable to be as dark as I wanted to be.
Yeah.
There was some aspect of it that I really enjoyed, which is like, it's what she was saying. People just tell her anything because they know she's not evaluating how moral or amoral they are.
Yeah.
So like me making some off-color joke, she's not going to go like, this guy's a dick and doesn't care about people. That's not going to be her response.
No, it's not.
And so, of course, I loved that. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I can hit her with that joke. She'll be fine with it. And she liked it. And then she joked back. And then we still don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Although there's nothing to really go through.
I mean, she could have. It would have been fine. Also, it did make me think after, you know, we're all sort of striving for this emotional stability, not being affected by others, not letting other people's emotions control our
Contaminate
emotions.
ours.
And that's what she is.
Yeah.
So I don't want that. Like I'm okay with letting other people in my orbit affect me because that's part of typical relationships on Earth that we're not living in vacuums for the most part unless you're someone like her.
Right.
So there's like great things to take from it
Yeah.
and boundaries are great and you know it's good not to feel guilty all the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's also good to feel guilt sometimes.
Well, again, right. That's what we're endlessly saying. So the option isn't either be a sociopath or be someone whose life is unmanageable because they are consumed by guilt over trivial things.
Yeah.
It's like, of course, finding some sweet
Middle
spot
ground.
line, some nuanced line in there.
Yeah, but
because the Wednesday thing I thought was awesome.
Me too.
I thought that was a really cool thing to point out. I also am sincerely compassionate about the fact that there's no positive version of a sociopath ever displayed on TV.
I agree. Yeah.
And these are real human beings
Yes,
who really
yes.
have this and live here with us. And I want for them to be seen as three-dimensional like everyone else, like
too.
the autistic people want to be, not just this one thing, all the things,
Yes.
the whole range.
Absolutely.
I think like Wednesday is this very safe way for us to look at a version of this that's not so scary to us.
Yeah.
So and then it's a spectrum.
I could see there's a version of me that is so therapized that I'm just separate. I'm just mentally separate from everyone. I have all these boundaries up and I'm not letting you affect me. And I'm, you know, like I can see myself at some point getting there. I've already made progress in that, which I think is a good thing. But this really made me think like, well, I got to be kind of careful.
Yeah.
I got to be kind of careful. Like,
But I don't think you could get there even if you tried.
maybe not to the full level, but
Yeah.
it's okay. I think it's okay to be affected.
Yeah. Well, again, within a range.
Yeah.
You don't want to be unaffected by people.
Yeah. But
But
sometimes
when
I
it
do want
becomes
that.
pathological to you
Yeah.
and it's taking over your mood, when
Right.
you are powerless over someone else's mood, taking control of yours,
Yeah.
I think that's an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or at least minimally, I don't want to go through life being that contagious where it's like, well, good luck. I hope I bump into people that are positive today,
Right. Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
or people that aren't going through something, they don't have their own shit. Like I very much like being able to recognize that this is someone else's thing
Yes.
and I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And then that doesn't mean I can't then be a part of the good side of them. That actually brings me joy,
Yeah.
right? You just
Yeah.
go, yeah, this that's a weakness of theirs, and they're gonna occasionally be like that. But then also, I'm gonna have fun on this.
Yeah. Of course. I mean that. Yeah. Oh no.
Were there any facts?
Yeah. Couple. Oh, I wanted to play the clip, the Men in Black clip.
Oh, great. And your speaker's at the... There you
I
go.
found it.
Edwards, what the hell happened?
Hesitated.
May I ask why you felt little Tiffany deserved to die?
Well, she was the only one that actually seemed dangerous at the time, sir.
How'd you come to that conclusion?
Well, first I was going to pop this guy hanging from the street light, and then I realized, he's just working out. And how would I feel if somebody come running in the gym, bust me in my ass while I'm on the treadmill? Then I saw this snarling beast guy, and I noticed he had a tissue in his hand. I realized, he's not snarling. He's sneezing. Ain't no real threat there. Then I saw little Tiffany. I'm thinking, 8-year-old white girl, middle of the ghetto, bunch of monsters, this time of night with quantum physics books. She about to start some shit, Ed. She's about 8 years old. Those books are way too advanced for her. If you ask me, I say she's up to something. And to be honest, I'd appreciate it if you eased up off my back about it. Or do I owe her an apology?
You know what's funny? What I think's happening there,
Yeah.
that his voice is way higher. I think because there is an algorithm that can comb YouTube to make sure no copyrighted material's on there. So there's like a mathematical code to all the sound, and then it can comb through massive amounts. Like if you Beatles song, and that's how they enforce copyright. And I think this person sped it up a little so it doesn't get flagged.
Really?
Because that was higher than how he talks, and it was a little faster than that scene really is.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's my hunch.
Okay, she talked about inherent emotions versus social emotions. The 4 primal emotions are happiness, sadness, fear, and anger. And then social emotions are emotions that depend upon the thoughts, feelings, or actions of other people as experienced, anticipated, or imagined at first hand. Examples are embarrassment, guilt, shame, jealousy, envy, elevation, empathy, and pride. In contrast, basic emotions, happiness, sadness, only require the awareness of one's own physical state. Interesting.
Very interesting. Oh, the other thing that came up in Charlie's, when he and I were talking about it, is we also happen to be talking to a very smart human who has a PhD in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
Clearly, there are sociopaths that are dum-dums.
Of course.
So it's like, I wonder how those people who have to outsmart and put on the mask and anticipate and be really on top of it, I wonder how that plays out. Or like, they only have so much capacity to lie creatively and convincingly because they're also not very intelligent. Clearly, there's got to be sociopaths that are low intelligence.
Yeah, and also like different environments so that they don't access.
Yes, she was being very fair about
her privilege.
Yeah. But then you're trying to imagine, I was trying to imagine talking to a very stupid sociopath. And does that become more obvious?
They just might not, they're probably not masking.
Or maybe those are the ones that are in jail. I don't know.
Yeah, true.
I just got really curious about the relationship between intelligence and it and how it would be affected.
I mean, she definitely also, it was clear this is such a spectrum. Like
yeah, big time.
It seems, has like mild to moderate.
But on this topic,
Yeah.
going into this interview, I'm like, I will know. Even if I ignore that I know, I will be able to detect. And I don't think I would have detected.
That she was one. Yeah.
Yeah. I left going, no, that's not, you don't. You actually don't have that skills. Now, maybe the fibs I would catch.
Right.
But just the overall, I would chalk it up to something else.
Yeah, like the fact that she's a stalker. Like that's fascinating. But it doesn't sound like she likes stalking people she knows necessarily. It's like it's a voyeuristic escape.
Interesting.
So interesting. Okay, I looked up why psychopaths like animals. She said they often do. Well, she said psychopaths do too.
In her book, it talks about sociopaths.
Oh,
okay.
Well, she did say, and it does say here, psychopaths gravitate towards dogs since they are obedient and easy to manipulate. They often get upset when their dogs die because dogs offer unconditional love. That doesn't really make sense.
Type in why sociopaths like animals.
These are all like Reddit.
Oh.
Sociopaths and Animals Part 1, sociopathworld.com.
Oh, wow. There's a sociopathworld.com.
Weird. I can't.
We can't
There's
find-
no.
She had no good answer, and she
Yeah.
has a PhD in this.
Yeah, true. Okay. Animals who mate for life. Here are 7 of them.
Okay.
Wolves.
Ooh.
This says wolves. Power couples. Oh. In a gray wolf pack, it's usually only the male and female alpha who are allowed to breed. The pair mate for life as a way to cement their position as pack leaders. Beavers, sharing is caring.
Oh, of course beavers are monogamous.
It says monogamy is more about practicality than romance in beavers.
Oh, this is more like arranged marriage. More financial.
Oh, these are Eurasian beavers, specifically.
Uranus beavers.
They team up for life as a way to increase their chances of survival. I mean, that's like humans. Okay. Gibbons. Oh,
Yeah, gibbons are among the apes.
California mice.
Oh, you wouldn't expect that in California.
No.
Not as progressive as we thought, California.
Shingleback lizards.
Oh, shingleback is a bad term because it makes me think of shingles.
Well, wait till you hear this one. Diplozoon paradoxum.
Okay, is that a
It's a
plant
parasitic
protein?
flatworm.
A parasitic flatworm.
Mm-hmm.
And it has a mate?
It lives in the gills of a type of fish. That's disgusting. Let's see. It must conjoin with another specimen or it cannot reach adulthood.
Oh, and well, that's
Yeah, it
that
doesn't.
doesn't sound like the same thing.
Black vultures. It says, unlike mammals, monogamy is the norm when it comes to birds. Take black vultures, for example. I don't know if I trust this. I'm going to go to a different web. No, it's BBC.
Oh, monogamy.com?
BBCEarth.com. I thought, how come lobsters aren't on here? Don't lobsters mate for life?
How could they?
That's a whole thing on Friends.
It is, but lobsters, like, do they hang together? Aren't they just kind of fucking floating all
No.
haphazardly around
they
the floor?
have a very robust romantic
Oh, they do?
life.
Oh, wow.
Okay, this is on Britannica. 6 animals that mate for life. Beavers, gray wolves, gibbons, macaroni penguins. Penguins. We know that about
Yeah,
penguins.
we knew that one. The boys are so nice, those penguins. They sit on the eggs
Yeah.
and they travel great distances to feed.
Sandhill cranes, bald eagles.
Bald eagles. That's interesting because I've seen a lot of bald eagle nests and I don't see 2 birds in the nests.
Well, they're off on vacation.
Okay.
Romantic
They're on business
getaway.
trip.
One's there and the
Yeah.
other one. Oh, you think the
Like
other
the
one's
gi-
cheating?
The gibbons are together. They're inseparable.
Oh.
But I always see one bald eagle, presumably sitting on some chicks.
Yeah.
I'm going to look for it, though. I always see bald eagles when I go rafting in Wyoming
Okay.
with Lincoln.
Yeah.
So I've not been on high alert for a monogamous partner.
Well, that's obviously, and as it should be, the female bald eagle is looking after the babies and the male bald eagle is working.
Right. Okay.
That's what we should all be replicating.
Yeah. The man should go out and work.
Yeah.
And the mom should stay home with the chicks.
With the babies. I mean, just because they're not together during the day doesn't mean they're not monogamous, though, for mating.
Well, right. I guess then we get into it. They just only mate with each other. Is that the same?
I think so.
But like, gibbons are a pair. They're together. Sounds like these beavers are too. Like they do everything together. Beaver. Ironic.
I mean, it's also whatever. We know as people, it's learned behavior.
Can we go through quickly what are the least offensive and most offensive nicknames for a vagina?
Sure.
Because beaver's so silly. Could it really be?
It's not offensive to me, but it's like gross.
Yeah, you wouldn't want your partner to.
Call it that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay, yeah. So that one is
It's like innocuous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What other ones do you want to go through?
Well, no, just that one, I guess, is all we have to tackle.
It's person to person.
It is. That's for sure.
If some people say pussy, it's gross.
Uh-huh.
And if others, it's fine.
Yeah. Don't you feel bad for the people who they're just gross when they say it? Isn't
No,
it weird
'cause
that different
they're-
people have different
They're
access?
doing it.
Okay.
The reason it's gross is because they're perverted.
Okay.
And like it feels nasty when it comes out of their mouth because they're nasty.
Right.
But also vagina is
I had
boring.
a friend of ours, dad, older man,
Mm-hmm.
he said he always pronounced it pissy.
Oh,
And
God.
we were like, whoa, is he calling it pissy?
Is he saying it wrong?
I think so. Like, I
Okay.
think that's how he pronounces pussy. But
Ugh. But I mean, does he know it's pussy and that's like the way he says it? Or does he think it's spelled P-I-S-S-Y?
he can't think it's spelled that. He's a smart man.
Oh, he is?
Yes. But he does have a little bit of an affected accent.
Oh.
And I just don't know if maybe when he was young, that's what he and his friends did. But he would always say, like, yeah.
Say it. I'll close my eyes.
Okay. What are you guys over here talking about? Pissy?
Ew.
Mm-hmm.
That's confusing too because piss is a part of it.
It might be telling of what his kink is.
Oh.
I don't know, but what a way to pronounce it.
Wow.
Yeah, because you're right. It's not a great conversion rate, guys saying pussy. It can be really triggering. So you're already in, thin ice. And then if you now change it to pissy.
Yeah, but I also don't want I don't think it's sexy to call it a vagina. Like
God, no.
So then what is there?
Thank you. That's what most men feel like.
Well, I know. I mean,
we're happy if you call our penis anything.
well, of course.
I know.
Well, because women
And then-
aren't as nasty for the most part.
Well, you guys are nastier.
Well,
What are
we're
you talking
nasty, but not
about? Publicly.
in the way that men are. I'm
You guys
talking
are
about
sociopaths.
pissy and
Pissy.
stuff. I mean, I don't like roast beef curtains. I'll tell you that.
Sure. I understand that.
That one's not for me.
Right. No one really says that, though. Okay?
Should I look it up?
Roast beef curtains?
No,
Pissy?
no.
We're losing a lot of people right now. There's so many words, and I'm not going to say them because women will just hate me that I even know them. But I know all of them.
You do?
I know all
Can
of
you just
them.
say some? I'm allowing it.
Pink taco.
Yeah, no one likes that.
I know. Everyone I say is going to be like, ugh. So it's like every time I open my mouth now, it'll be met with gross.
That's fine. I just
But
want
I'm just saying, I know. Do you want me to write them all down for you and then
I'll
send them
read
to you?
them?
Yeah. By yourself, you can read them out loud. There's a million.
Say some more.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Why?
Because I've already lost at least 10 listeners.
No, you haven't.
Okay. Hair pie.
Right.
Now, hair pie, no one should say, but I often say, as you know, hair pie a la commode, which is
Yeah.
kind of a fun joke.
Yeah, you love that shit.
Yeah. I say that when we're at a restaurant, I go, I wonder if they have hair pie a la commode.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that's kind of fun.
It is funny. These are just funny words for it, though. They're not what you would actually refer to it as.
Being sexy.
Right.
Yeah. Pussy's the main go-to.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Yet again, we get the short end of the stick. There's no good word. There's no actually sexy word.
Pussy's kind of
I know, but a lot of people have ruined it.
right. But that's, again, no matter what you call it, there's going to be a group of guys that really bastardize it quickly.
Yeah, you're right.
There's no magic word. Kitty, girls like kitty, but I don't, that's too.
I don't like
It feels
that.
immature to me.
Yeah.
Unless you're a listener and you call it that, then I think it's great.
These are all personal
They
preferences. It's all fine. I don't like cats. They eat your brain within 24 hours of death.
I was randomly a couple days ago wondering what the origin of pussy is. Is it pussy cat?
Yeah, it is.
It is. We know that.
I guess I don't know it for certain, but that is what I
That's
think
what
it is.
makes logical
Yeah.
sense.
And then kitty. But is it just because of the
You wanna-
hair?
Or you want to pet it?
Right. Where does all.
Or
I
that'll
guess-
eat your head when you're dead?
Well, it will. All right, let's see. I think those are my facts. Those are my facts for Patric. That was quite an episode.
One of my favorites.
I'm really glad we got to do it.
Me too.
And-
I applaud her for being open about it. I mean, I can't think of a higher risk thing. I really do.
I guess a psychopath is higher risk because if a psychopath asked to come here, I
Yeah.
would say we can't do that.
That's true.
That's too dangerous.
It doesn't sound like, I don't know. I didn't leave the interview with total confidence in our diagnosis of these things. I'm not sure. I know that people are getting diagnosed as psychopath. What therapist has gone, okay, well, we've done your evaluation, and so you are a psychopath. Do you think that sentence has been said in a therapeutic setting?
There are diagnosed psychopaths. So
I know, but they're generally in
be.
prison.
Right.
I don't know that in regular life.
Well, you know that show with Steve Carell? What was that show?
Yes, where he was chained up in the basement.
Yeah, by his patient who was a psychopath. God.
Or was he a sociopath?
No, he was a psychopath.
He was a psychopath. Okay.
But yeah, you're right. It's all muddy.
I know.
It's all muddy, but I think, look, I feel bad. Like, no one's choosing any of this stuff.
No,
I'm not.
that's what's most important. You're just born.
You're just born.
You're just born. All right.
All
Love
right,
you.
Love you.